Welcome to The Prisoner's Dilemma, a show where we watch and talk about the 1960s TV show The Prisoner. I'm Brendan, and with me is the man that has definitely, truly, absolutely escaped from the village, Matthew. Give it up for Matthew, everyone. He did it. He for sure made it out.
I'm driving around in my little car. Angela's back home waiting for me. I'm so excited.
Way to go.
Wait, hold on. There's like a dark cloud on the horizon. Oh, I think I just heard thunder. It's probably nothing.
It's probably nothing.
Nothing to worry about.
That's right.
No, Brennan, congratulations to both of us because we made it.
We did it.
We did it. They said it couldn't be done.
All of our haters said, you idiots, no one's ever finished The Prisoner before. No one even knows if it has an ending. You're so stupid.
Is a thing no one would want to talk about. No one has ever talked about.
No one's ever found the ending of The Prisoner worthy of conversation.
Everybody's gone on those trailheads looking for the end of The Prisoner arc, and they've never found it.
I have a quote. I have many quotes for today.
Me too, man.
But I have a quote on the ending from one Patrick McGowan that maybe explains why people have not talked about the ending of The Prisoner since it came out up to today. If whatever we wanted to say is not already contained within the episodes of the series, then I failed in the production of them, and any amount of chit-chat now will not make good that omission.
Yeah.
He was very much of the mind of like, look, I made the thing. Look at it.
Look at it.
It says what it wants to say.
It did say what it wanted to say, and
That's
all
right.
the things that it said.
That's right. Hey, I always called you Patrick.
Hey, Patrick. Hey, it's me, Patrick. You're also Patrick. We're both Patrick. We're not Squidward. We're Patrick.
Hey, what did the show want to say?
What did the show want to say, ultimately?
Yeah, what do you think?
When it comes down to it?
Yeah, what do you think the meaning of The Prisoner is?
This is a very weird way to have this conversation, but okay. Do you want my real, actual thoughts
No,
on this?
absolutely not. What I want you to
good.
tell me is what happens in the final episode of The Prisoner, Fallout.
You got it. After The Prisoner's only last time on, covering the events of Once Upon a Time, we jump back to 6, number 28, the supervisor, and Angelo, the butler, as they descend ever deeper below the village. Number 28 has 6 change into his original episode 1 arrival outfit, and from there deeper still into the throne room, a familiar cavern, but with a bunch of new and unusual props. There, 6 takes an offered throne with Angelo at his side, while 28 takes his place as the identification delegate among a gallery of similarly masked and robed delegates. The president, played by a former number 2 actor Kenneth Griffith, presides over the delegates to introduce the 3 forms of rebellion. Youthful rebellion, characterized by number 40. Youthful rebellion, characterized by number 48, a ne'er-do-well played by Alexis Kaner, who riles up the assemblage with a Canadian arrangement of the spiritual dem bones. Established individual rebellion in the form of the resuscitated Leo McKern, number 2, who has turned against number 1. Finally, the third pure form of rebellion in the form of number 6, or Sir, as the president calls him. 6 agrees to give a speech, but is shouted down by the delegates. Disheartened, 6 is led to number 1. He climbs a familiar lighthouse/rocket set, seeing the imprisoned 48 and 2 on the way. He enters a room with a hooded and masked figure, taking off the mask to reveal a second primate mask, which he then rips off to reveal his own face. 6 and 1, chase each other around a bit until 1 escapes up a ladder and 6 seals him off. From there, 6 links back up with Angelo and attacks the guards, freeing 2 and 48. The four have a rolling gunfight, launch the lighthouse rocket, and escape via the cage from Once Upon a Time, driven out by Angelo. The village is evacuated, and we briefly see Rover as he melts below the rocket. We jump somehow to a British highway. The group drops off 48 to hitchhike, 2 at the House of Lords, and then Angelo and Six take the bus to Six's flat. Six gets into his car and drives off as the door to Six's flat opens like a village door to allow Angelo to enter. The series ends with a replication of the first shots of the series. His car drives towards the camera, a close-up of McGowan's face, and a thunderclap, then nothing.
If you're not watching along... No, you know what? I have a field report that I've told you about already, but I'm going to tell the listeners.
Yeah, please.
About what it's like to not be watching along. Over the course of making this show, I've needed to watch episodes of The Prisoner, and sometimes my family members will be along for the ride. And when we watched The Girl Who Was Death, a totally normal episode of The Prisoner, my sister Kyle was there to watch it with me. And periodically I would ask her, now what do you think the plot of this show is? And she wasn't quite sure. Well, this past weekend, I was hanging out with her and her family, and she said, Brendan, I got to know how that show ends. I got to know how The Prisoner ends. I got to know what happens. And I was like, well, that's interesting. You have maybe less context about what's going on than anyone. What if I showed you some good episodes? Like, you know, some of the stuff earlier in the show. She was like, okay, you can show me a good one. So I showed her A, B, and C.
Classic.
Great episode of The Prisoner. And then when that was done, I said, well, what do you want to do now? And she was like, well, now I really want to know what happens. I want to know what they do. And so we watched Fallout, the final episode of The Prisoner.
Without even watching Once Upon a Time.
Without even watching Once Upon a Time. Of course. Of course. And she was so angry. She was so upset.
Oh, no.
And I told her, the viewing public were also very confused and upset. And she said, yeah, I agree. They should have run him out of town. I get it. I'm going to beat him up.
Oh, no. I hope your sister didn't beat up Patrick McGowan.
Yeah, she resurrected his bones and then beat him up.
Your sister, the necromancer.
That's right,
important.
that's right.
That's
Yeah,
context that not the audience won't have.
There's so much going on here. Mm-hmm. There's so much to get into. Let's talk production.
Let's do it.
I wanted you to say the summary, because the summary, truly, this is like a real peculiar beast as far as like an episode of television. Yeah. But talking specifically about the production, written and directed by Patrick McGowan, and featuring a number of people who he loved working with. Mm-hmm. Alexis Cantor is here. Kenneth Griffith is here. Liam McKern is here once again. Mm-hmm. Angelo is here. Just folks that McGowan came to appreciate as professionals who enjoyed working with, enjoyed having chemistry with, had great chemistry with on screen.
They went to high school and they were all in the same chemistry class, and they so enjoyed it they decided to make a show together.
That's right. That's exactly correct. There was only one throne. And as we have said, really stretching like purse strings, development time. Everyone's exhausted. Everyone's tired out of their minds. Just a real remarkable thing to exist, I think.
Totally.
Do you have anything to say about the production of this episode?
I have a lot to say about the production of this episode. First of all, there's a lot of contradictory information about the production of this episode.
Yes.
And I think that's worth getting into. We are recording before Once Upon a Time, our episode on Once Upon a Time comes out. But just to say it, whether Once Upon a Time or Fallout was written in 36 hours or both is something that is contradictory.
Yes.
There are reports of both versions of this. There's reports of... Okay, let's start at the beginning. McGowan claims sometimes that he knew from the start how he wanted the series to end.
Yes.
I had a quote here. I envisioned it from the beginning. In a series like this, you have to know from the onset what you're aiming at. You have got to know the ending before you can begin. So I had the idea for the final episode, first of all, and took it from there. Now, that's McGoohan. Lou Grade said at around the time of Ice Station Zebra, Lou Grade has a quote as saying, he came to me and he said, Lou, I just cannot find an ending. I've got too confused with the project. And I thought it was very nice of him to come straight out with me. And I told the networks, we have no ending.
Yeah. Yeah, that's bonkers.
Yeah.
But it's very understandable when you consider not merely how hard this project was, how weird this project was, and how bloody-minded Patrick McGoohan has driven away such an essential part of his creative team, right? George Markstein is out. Tomlin is out by this point, I think. I don't know that for a fact, actually. He might be in the credits.
I think Tomlin's still around.
But certainly other directors, other collaborators who have made great prisoner content with him before. You know, Patrick McGoohan loves content and he loves making content. But some people can only take so much, right?
Totally.
And so you get to this point where it's like, all right, wrap it all up. Give us the big sell. How does it all turn out? And you get the sense that like part of why McGoohan brought on these people that he liked working with, I think was because he was, as you said before, he was very, very confident in being able to tell them, just make up your own lines. Just like, I don't have anything for you here. This is the kind of vibe that I'm going for, but please just like do something here. And he trusted them to fill in the blanks there. Because he was doing everything else. And so if there was anywhere where he could afford not to do work, he would try and do it.
Yeah. I think the thing you're bringing up there about like Markstein no longer being around is really crucial, right? Because Markstein did have a very clear notion of what the season 1 ending was going to be back when it was going to be 2 seasons.
Sure.
I don't know if we want to talk about that now because it's directly related to like the number 1 stuff. It might be better to save it till later.
Yeah, let's save it.
But I think that regardless, right, we can think about McGoohan after Markstein departed, laboring over this notion of like, well, there was a plan, right? And now that's not going to happen anymore. So what do I do, right?
And you can see that based on what it is that they wind up coming up with. There are so many bits and pieces that are very clearly pillaged from past ideas and are retrofitted into this new configuration. The rocket ship is a big part of that, I think.
Totally. But I don't completely disbelieve that from the start, Six had some thoughts, or Six, geez. McGoohan had some thoughts about like how he wanted it to end in terms of like, what is the effect he wanted to have the final episode to have?
Sure.
Because I do think that if nothing else, I think he achieved what he set out to do from like an artistic standpoint with this episode. But we can get to that more at the end.
No, say a little bit more about like, what do you think? Well, do you think this is a happy ending?
No. But I also don't think it matters.
Sure. Yes.
Like, I think that McGoohan would repeatedly say this episode's an allegory, right?
Yes.
And so I think that, you know, I have a quote. He's
got a quote.
Scroll down. I got a quote. Watch out. Oh, God. Jump in front of him. Get down, Mr. President. There's a quote. Oh geez. Cut all this as I'm scrolling because I have 7 pages of notes.
Give it to me, baby.
That is a good quote, though. Here we go. I can just look at it this way. There it is. Okay. This is a quote. I don't remember who this is from, but it was a quote about sort of Patrick McGoohan versus George Markstein. I wasn't privy to this, but it was pretty well known that there was a slight tension going on between George on the one side and Pat on the other. I think this was from David Tomlin. Pat kept introducing things like massive balloons and all sorts of gimmicks, which I thought were great, frankly. Whereas George, the quote goes on to say, it's a bit long, so I'm just going to summarize here. George has this very like realist perspective, which we've talked about before.
Yeah.
He was very good at like putting together, explanations for the weird stuff that McGowan would dream up.
And figuring out how to say like, all right, that is all going on, but we need a story about a man that does A, it goes to B, and results in C.
Whereas, I think that McGowan, because he kind of won in terms of, wrestling control of the production, right?
Yes.
What he was trying to do was much more sort of allegorical. It was much more in like the space of fables, right? He wanted the thing he was producing to put you in a particular kind of headspace. And he didn't care if the thing itself was like internally consistent. He just cared about the effect it had on the audience.
Yeah, just to answer my own question about like what kind of an ending this is. I said last episode that I view Once Upon a Time as the climax of the show. I think that holds true for a lot of this. I think one of the noteworthy things about this episode is lots of weird stuff happens in it, but the man we have known as number 6 does and says very little. It is much more, the episode is called Fallout. This is an episode of what happens after number 6 has quote unquote won.
Yeah, quote unquote won.
Yeah, of course. We'll talk.
Asterisk. Citation needed.
Footage not available.
Anyway.
Yep.
So let's dig into it. And I think there's so many ideas. There's so much thought happening here. I think we can use just talking through the episode as a way to like semi-structure this, just because otherwise we're just going to like be shooting quotes back and forth at each other forever.
There's a very good chance that a lot of this episode is just us quoting the episode back and forth at each other. One thing I want to mention before getting into it is I watched a commentary version of this episode that featured Eric Michael, who was one of the music editors on the show. He was editor for 13 episodes. And Noreen Ackland, who is editor for part of this episode, who edited this episode and Living in Harmony.
Oh, interesting.
And so that's all she knows about The Prisoner.
That's
and
so cool.
She was one of the people on the commentary track.
That's so awesome. She's literally
like the Brendan sister of her time.
Yeah.
It's like, so what do you think this is about? Oh, I don't know.
Well, there's cowboys, I think.
But apparently there's cowboys. Boy, this box set is just like, I got this when we were first talking about making the show, and because it was just about to come out, and it is really just sort of a treasure trove of little bits and pieces of information. I really, really enjoy it. But gosh, it is, and this is by no means to besmirch their contributions in any way whatsoever, but it shows, I think, the desperation to find who was still alive that was contributing to these episodes at the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But totally. on the other hand, that's kind of interesting. That it's like, when would you ever think to have the music editor as a commentary track for an episode of television? You know what I mean? That's kind of neat.
It is cool.
And pertinent for this episode because it features a couple of very noteworthy music drops.
Oh, it's so good. I love the music in this episode so much.
It was almost a disaster.
It was almost a disaster?
Yeah. So, okay. So before we get to that, let's say a little bit about going as yourself. Yes. They go down the elevator and they bring him into a weird dressing room where a number 6 mannequin, I believe, who has like the face of from some previous episode. I can't remember if it was the general or not. I feel like we've seen this weird face before.
I mean, it looks very similar to a bunch of the casts that we did see in the general. That's certainly true. Yeah. But it's also sort of evocative of like the faces that were in the Tunnel of Love in The Girl Who Was Death, right?
Sure. Or the Greek busts that are around the village.
Or the masks that are later in this episode, right? Like,
yep.
There's a bunch with this sort of thing. Before we jump too much further, though, there's 2 things. One, there is a last time on, which is very funny.
Yeah, there's a last time on to explain what happened in Once Upon a Time, pretty extensively at that.
Yeah, and it's interesting the things that they did pick out from that to show. And I also just want to say I did lie when I said back in the general that the Prisoner episodes never directly followed the other ones. This is obviously directly following that.
Lie, Matthew.
That's me. It's also, this is a unique opening. We just have like the helicopter shots of Port Merion, and this is when they reveal the location. right?
That's true. This is the very first time they revealed Port Merion is where the village footage was captured at request of
Sir William Clow.
Sir William, say his name again?
Sir William Clow, I believe.
Clow, the guy who is lord over Port Merion.
I actually don't know if he was a sir at the time because he's only credited, I think, is just William Clow. Anyway.
Hang on.
This is important. We got to know who's a sir and who's not a sir.
Sir Bertram Clow Williams Ellis.
There it is.
Yep. When was he knighted?
God, 4 names is too many names. No wonder I could only remember one of them. I'm glad we got a Googling bit in for the final episode.
Hey, you ever look at this website?
Whose website?
Wikipedia.
Yeah, I've been known to.
There's all kinds of shit on here. This is crazy.
Yeah, World Wide Web, man.
1958, Williams Ellis was made a commander in the Order of the British Empire for Public Services. He was made a Knight Bachelor on the New Year's Honors List of 1972, quote, 1972. For services to the preservation of the environment and to architecture. At the time, he was the oldest person ever to be knighted.
Oh, cool. So yeah, it would be a few years after this episode that he would actually get knighted, which explains things.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so you were describing it. I interrupted rudely. But what's really interesting, yeah, so you're totally right. We get a first person perspective shot into this room where it's just a row of empty hangars, and then in the middle, it's a statue of McGowan wearing his outfit.
Yeah, the all-black outfit that he was abducted in.
And as you mentioned earlier, number 28, Peter Swanwick says, we thought you would be happier as yourself.
No one addresses him as number 6 in this episode.
That's right. Explicitly.
It's almost as if, as you noted at the end of Once Upon a Time, he has transferred the mantle of number 6 on to some sort of beast of burden to be slain. To have the demon be cast out.
Yep.
But he's not called number 2 or even by any number at this point. No.
He's just called Sir later on.
Yes.
Yeah, so there's a couple of really interesting things that I quite liked here. One thing in the script, this bit written by McGowan, it just says, we thought you would be happier with nothing else. And Peter Swanwick adds as yourself in the episode for clarity. If we remember back at Dance of the Dead, the last time he got to dress up as himself,
yes,
he was told explicitly by number 2 at the time, you are a person who no longer exists.
He's dead.
Uh-huh. And if we think about, we've been reading a lot of, the prison as, the afterlife. Or an afterlife or a purgatory or things like that. He's getting to return. He's returning to himself here.
Yeah, kind of a Orphic kind of journey.
As he descends deeper and deeper into the underworld. Yeah, man.
to be judged.
I mean, the president's wearing the wig of a British judge. That's true.
Yeah.
But we'll get there. So then we get what is probably this episode has so many really good sequences in it, I think. But I really like the sequence of them going down the hallway after the welcome sign with all of the jukeboxes, all blaring, all you need is love.
Well, okay. So this is what I was getting to with the music was almost a disaster. Yeah, as he's unbuttoning the collar, it starts in with the Beatles' All You Need Is Love, which is an incredible needle drop, even for the time.
It is.
And they begin down this hallway where there is a sequence of different jukeboxes. They're not all the same. They're different models, different configurations. And in the original production,
Script.
It was supposed to be like 8 different songs all playing at the exact same time. All You Need Is Love being one of them. And as soon as they did this, they discovered it was terrible.
Do you
they
have
were
the songs?
so upset with it. I have it.
I do.
You take it away, please.
It was All You Need Is Love, the first one on the list. This is from Patrick McGowan. Little Boxes, Toot Toot Tootsie Goodbye, Hello Dolly, Yellow Submarine, and then Patrick McGowan has written, Or Whatever. But what's more interesting to me is that the scene where all of the jukeboxes were going to be blaring all the sounds, this was going to be after a scene where McGoohan wanted a different needle drop. So he wanted a different needle drop for As They're Descending, and that was going to be Strawberry Fields.
Huh. Okay.
Which is another Beatles song, and if you're not familiar with it, the lyrics are, let me take you down, because I'm going to Strawberry Fields. Nothing is real, and nothing to get hung about. Strawberry Fields forever. Living is easy with eyes closed. Misunderstanding all you see. It's getting hard to be someone, but it all works out. It doesn't matter much to me.
Now, what do you think he meant by that?
I mentioned earlier to you, just like in our private messages, I said I think this episode is a masterpiece, and I'll get into why I think that as we get through. But I think that these lyrics are really intentional, right, in terms of what McGoohan was trying to achieve, and it is not an explicit, like, this is the meaning, but it is gestural in a way that the episode is gestural at the things that McGoohan is clearly obsessed with, right? So nothing is real. This is an allegory and nothing to get hung up about. Don't get all freaked out about this episode. It's an allegory. Don't try to read it straight.
Deeply, deeply vibes based.
Yes, that's a great way to put it. This is a vibes-based episode.
It is. It really is.
But also, living is easy with eyes closed, misunderstanding all you see, right? These are things that McGoohan has really clearly cared a lot about, right? If we think back to, Free for All, when he was first yelling at the population of the village, saying, wake up, right? Be free by my order, right? This is clearly that this is McGoohan trying to speak to the audience to tell them something.
Never before has the show been very like, hey, this is a TV show. I can see you watching the thing.
Yeah.
This is how I think you should think about the things that are going on right now.
Yeah. And I think the fact that it resists just like having McGoohan's character turn to the camera and just start monologuing straight to the audience is, I think, really good, right? It's the thing that we keep on complimenting, or that we have complimented the series out throughout, right? Of like, it trusts you. It trusts the audience to figure it out.
Yeah, it trusts you, and its dialogue is sharp, right? Like, it is never... It says what it needs to say without being obvious or contrived. Yeah, is my feeling.
Definitely. Yeah, I think so too.
Let's talk about this room.
Yeah, the throne room.
We've said before, over and over and over again, keep an eye out for the big caves underneath the village. Well, here they are, and it's a mini golf course built just for you. Can you get a hole-in-one? Get past the seesaw machine guns.
Ooh.
There's some guys at a commentator's table, I guess. Why do we have so many doctors? Is that a rocket ship over there? Don't know about all these white robes.
There are a lot of people in white robes.
Yeah.
If there's one thing I hate about this episode, it is how white and how male it is. It's a real shame. Like, the episode, The Prisoner was never a perfect show. It has serious missteps on this. But the series previously at least tried to integrate, women. It tried to integrate people of color. None of that here. That's completely dropped.
Yeah, it tried to represent the village as a international community, and it has had successes, it's had failures, it's had missteps along the way, and it has had a mixture of actresses, both incredibly talented and maybe a little unsuited for the roles that they were given. Some that got along with Patrick McGoohan, tons that did not.
Yep.
It is no surprise, I think, that in the in the 11th hour of making the thing, when McGoohan is looking around for the people that are willing to work with him, that he can trust, that those are other white men that are actors. Yeah. It's a shame, and I like the performances that they put on, but yeah,
totally.
It stands out.
It does stand out.
Yeah.
I think it's just worth mentioning here because there's nothing else that can be done about it. Speaking of this room that you were describing as a mini golf course, and I don't think you're wrong. It is very... we've we've praised the show previously for the set design.
Yeah.
Right. This is not an episode where the set design is particularly strong. Right. And part of this may be the fact that, according to some reports, right, McGoohan got them again, the scripts, a couple hours before they were filming.
Maybe, yeah. They at least had enough heads up to know that, like,
we need a rocket.
we need a rocket. This is a set that's twice as large. It uses twice as much set space as any of the other sets that they've had previously. And there's so much, like, there's stalactites all over the ceiling in this place. So they at least had the setup there.
Totally.
You can tell where there's definitely some stuff that's crammed in. Like, they have these elevators that are literally, like, right beneath where the seesaw is. The president later has to, like, stop the seesaw in order to get access to one of them.
Which is great.
Yeah. It feels very rushed for as much stuff that it has in it. And it has stuff in there that never really gets used or gestured at. And so I wonder if maybe that's, like, the set designers kind of improvising, or McGoohan sort of requesting things that he wasn't sure if he was going to use or not, that kind of thing.
Totally. One thing that is interesting is the script does call the cave to look like the Council of the United Nations.
Okay.
Speaking of, like, dropped international stuff, and we have said it repeatedly, right? Like, who are the soldiers that are in this space? It's those soldiers that look like UN peacekeepers.
Yes. Yeah, they all
their
have...
hats are white instead of blue, but still.
Yep, and they're all wearing sunglasses.
They are. Well, because they're so cool.
I mean, it's worth saying this is not only reminiscent of, obviously, the stuff in the very tail end of Danger Man. Obviously, there was some, like, going into a big cavernous area to have your final showdown type stuff. But this is, at least in terms of framework, very Bond. This is very. Like... You Only Live Twice, the volcano layer, where finally we meet Blofeld and see, like, his master plan, that kind of thing.
Definitely. Which I remember you didn't particularly like that Danger Man went with, and here's a big cavern, like, final boss fight.
Watch this space.
TK.
I will say, I think The Prisoner does much more interesting things with the premise than Danger Man ever did.
Well, because it was playing, like, this episode is playing with that impulse.
Yes, extremely.
Right? So 28, like, who has led 6, or McGoohan, his character, Sir, whatever we want to call him.
I'll keep calling him 6.
I think it's a good plan. Becomes the identification delegate. We see him, like, take an offered mask and robe, right? And to put them on. Which is interesting. We see here as well, like, this is the where we get the pan over all the different delegates, right? We have, like, identification, as I said, but also therapy and nationalists and anarchists and, like, a bunch of different things.
Yeah, there's, like, groups of people that you typically, in terms of, like, political affiliation or, like, ideologically, like, sorted sort of people, like discontents and stuff like that. But there are also facets of society, particularly government-controlled facets of society, like education or information, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What do you take this council to represent?
I mean, I think it's society. Right?
That's right.
That feels
Asked
very
and answered.
much.
All done.
I mean, I'll say this here, and then I want to return to it at the end.
Okay.
Right? We've talked about this before with, like, the Living in Harmony episode. I think there's an impulse to want an answer for a thing, right?
Yes.
You want the cipher, you want the codex, you want the one interpretation, right? I think this is an episode, and this is a series that specifically defies that, right?
Oh, without a doubt.
And so, and like, this is part of what I get sort of frustrated with a lot of Prisoner fandom, right? Which is like a real through line of Prisoner fandom through, like, the last 60 years has been, like, trying to piece this apart for the one interpretation, the one right thing.
I can find the correct answer if only I can wikify this thing as precisely as possible.
Yes, which is, I think it's a quixotic thing. It's like, this is a quest with no real answer, right? But there's so much obviously being signaled here with the labels, right, and the fact that they're faceless, right, except they have these like white and black, like comedy tragedy style masks, right?
Yeah, it looks like a Greek choir.
It does, and it acts like it.
Yes,
right?
It does.
And with so much of what McGoohan has explicitly been trying to do with this series being about sort of reflecting and commenting on society, I can only read this big group of people as society. I don't know. How do you think about it?
Yeah, basically that.
Easy.
Yeah.
I mean, you can also read it as like...
This show's easy.
This stuff's easy.
Why doesn't anyone understand The Prisoner?
They're so silly. But you could also read it as like, this is, if we're taking the realist, like the Marxistinian, which is a term I just came up with.
That's good.
Thank you.
You sound like an academic.
Oh, it's almost like I am. The Marxistinian sort of reading of The Prisoner, right? You could read these as like, this is the council, like the true council governing what's happening in the village.
Oh,
right?
without a doubt. Yes. You can very easily imagine like, oh, this is the real power behind the village. This is what's been giving number 2 their directions this whole time, or at least has been like privy to it, arbiting what's going on down here. It's like Halo's the arbiter. He's always arbiting.
Yeah, I loved in Halo when the arbiter said, "I'm about to arbit." That was great.
Stand back. I'm going to arbit. It's arbit time.
It's arbit time.
But as good as this council is,
yes,
we got to talk about the president.
The president.
The president is perfect. It's Kenneth Griffith, who has been both a number 2,
Yep,
Napoleon Dynamite.
That's right.
And was the weirdo on the beach in Shindashima.
Yep.
He's back. He's the president. He's dressed as an old-fashioned British judge.
I mean, then fashioned, right? This is
Then
sort of what
fashioned.
they looked like.
Sure.
Except for the robes are a bit different.
Big Santa Claus robes. Huge wig.
Yep.
In charge of the proceedings.
Yes.
Speaks so respectfully to number 6. Has absolute control, except when he doesn't, but then he does. Seems to hold the power of life and death within this room.
Yes.
Is conducting the proceedings. The president is the perfect pseudo number 1.
Totally.
In a show that needed, regardless of whether it was going to say what it was doing or not, needed to have someone that you could focus the animosity of the show upon. Not animosity, maybe, but like to drive the action here of this denouement that takes place after Once Upon a Time. I think allegory gets you so far, but you have to have someone to say the lines, right?
Totally.
You have to have the king of the underworld there to pass judgment, right? You have to have
definitely
someone there who is representative of the opposing force. And explicitly, he is not number 1.
No.
But you could very easily see him as the guy that's on the phone speaking with the voice of number 1 whenever number 2 gets a call on the big red phone.
Totally. In fact, it's red. He's wearing red, right?
It is. And he seems to be the only one that can understand what number 1 is saying, which we'll say a little bit more in a few minutes, I think.
Yeah. And you already gestured at it, but by all reports, Kenneth Griffith wrote a lot of the president's speeches in this episode.
Yes.
I have a quote here. This is from McGoohan's biography, not autobiography, as I said last time. McGoohan gave Griffith responsibility for writing the president's speech and accepted it in a workmanlike manner by simply not objecting to the content and shooting what Griffith had written. Though this behavior might seem unforgivably curt to many, Griffith was able to shrug it off. He recognized that from McGoohan, who was the first to complain if something had fallen below his expectations, to simply include the piece without any alterations from himself was high praise.
Yeah. And from a man that will find fault with anything if he sees fit.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's really great in this episode. I think he's fantastically acted. I think that the writing is really good that he does in this episode. I think the dialogue he has later with some of the characters is great.
He's charming, he's menacing, and he's funny all at once.
Now the question, Brendan, is this the same guy as was the number 2? Is that this character?
I have a hard time believing that. I think this has got to be a different guy, probably.
I don't think there's like a real answer here, but one of the things that's interesting to me, right, is how in conversation this episode is with the girl who was death, in terms of like the whole thing about the girl who was death is there's a rocket that we need to stop, right?
Sure. Yes, that's true.
And this episode is explicitly there's a rocket. The main character is going to activate the rocket instead. And it's literally the same sets, like a bunch of the same sets.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think there's this really interesting, again, reading not one interpretation here, where we could say number 1 or whoever to number 2, Kenneth Griffith and Girl Who Was Death. Kenny, you did such a great job getting McGoohan to do that storybook. You had him reveal all these things that should be unknown to number 6, but which he incorporated into the story anyway. That gets it closer to our end goal of what we want to accomplish with 6. Have a promotion. You're the president now. I don't think that's what it is, but like there's a fun version of this you can imagine.
Sure. I'm thinking less about like the diegetic truth of it now, and I'm trying to think if you can get to Fallout without having made the Girl Who Was Death a thing that I think was bad and shouldn't exist. But gave us a rocket and Kenneth Griffith.
Uh-huh.
Can you have the one without the other? I don't know.
There's also the caves beneath, right? Are the same cave sets, right? They just adjust them up differently.
They got lots of those sitting around.
They do have a bunch of caves.
The one thing I know about the United Kingdom is they've got lots of caves.
It's true. So the president gives this really good speech, the Kenneth Griffith speech, and we end by him saying that he's not going to call 6 anymore. He's going to call him Sir.
That's right. Gives him a big blue chair to sit on.
A big blue throne to sit on, Brendan.
That's right. He's the Blue Prince now.
He's the Blue Prince. We figured it out. That's what Blue Prince is about, everybody, if you didn't know. Sorry for the spoilers. Hey, what did you think about this throne? The fact that it has weird cherubic babies on it, do you mean?
No. Well, I mean, if you've got things to say about the cherubic babies.
No, the thing that I think is most important to talk about is actually the color.
I think the color and the shape are very telling.
Oh, I didn't realize the shape.
Well, what's it sitting on?
On a blue pyramid.
It's sitting on a big blue pyramid. Where else have we seen big blue pyramid?
Well, the big blue eye that has been in the background of a whole bunch of scenes.
Big blue eyeball. That's right.
Hey, Brendan, real quick. I can't quite remember. You've got such a good memory. What color are Patrick McGoohan's eyes?
Blue.
Whoa, hold on. And they even brought attention to that in the Hammer into Anvil episode.
That's right.
Wait, hold on. We've been haunted by a big blue eye in the background and Patrick McGoohan has blue eyes? This is probably not relevant.
Hey.
Hey, what's up?
What happened to the end of the last episode?
The last episode?
Yeah, you remember when when Swanwick says, "What do you desire?" What does number 6 say?
Number 1.
Number 1, right. And he gets brought into this room and he gets put on a big blue throne.
Yeah, there's probably nothing to do with that.
It's probably nothing.
You know, in the background, as you mentioned, there's a big weird metal cylinder that's constantly spewing fog, and it says number 1 on it, and it has a green robot eye.
Yeah, there's a lot of fog in this room. It's weird.
It's weird.
McGoohan takes his throne, and he looks so satisfied with himself.
While plays, he's a jolly good fellow.
Yes, indeed. Do you remember which episode where that tune debuted?
Is it Many Happy Returns because it's his birthday?
It was Free for All, where he wins the election.
There it is.
Yeah.
Is it the same arrangement? I wouldn't be surprised.
It is the same arrangement, yes.
There it is. Yeah. Huh, weird. A couple of things from the script land written by McGoohan here. The script actually calls for both the butler and 6 to be offered masks and robes like 28 is and refuse them.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I think it's a good omission to have skipped over that.
No, it definitely is.
Yeah.
It definitely is. I think this is a lot cleaner.
Yeah.
And whose music is that? Well, it's numbers 2, Leo McKern's music.
Bum, 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 bum.
The cage like ascends up here.
It takes a long time.
It does take a long time. I mean, it's a big cage.
It is a big cage. They're doing it for real.
And we get some clips of 2's death, right? We get a repeat of like the die 6 die. And we see McKern's corpse, right?
The president yells out, "Resuscitate!"
Yeah.
And then they play the video in reverse.
They do.
This, I think, is one of the few missteps of the episode where I understand that they couldn't do it this way because there's production reasons why they need to retrieve the corpse and then like do stuff to it in order to bring it back.
Yeah.
But when he calls out "resuscitate" and the clip begins playing in reverse, even though I have seen this episode before, even though I have a perfect memory, even though I have a photographic memory of everything that I've ever seen or heard or done or tasted, I thought for a second, I was like, oh, dang, he's just going to be back to life because they reversed the clip, because it's a television show, because that's how this works. And that's not really the case. It's just sort of like them, I think, like priming you for the fact that they're going to bring him back to life.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the production constraints, because this was filmed much later than Once Upon a Time.
That's right. This was the last episode ever created.
That's right.
Wait, is that true? Let me double check. That would be wild if it was like the second to last.
No, it's not. It's the last. It's the last. And there's quite.
Can
a
you
bit
imagine
of a gap.
making this one and then going like, all right, let's make a regular one, I guess.
Let's make Girl Who Was Death.
I really liked you in this episode. We've still got the rocket. You want to stick around and be, I don't know, a little Hitler or something like that?
No. I don't want to be a little Hitler. Maybe a little Napoleon. Oh, there's something there.
There you go. Yeah, so it was the last one made.
Yeah. So it had been months. Leo McKern had moved on with his life, had gotten a haircut and a shave, and refused to grow his hair back out for the episode. In fact, Leo McKern only barely made it back.
Say more.
I don't know if you saw these, but by all reports, McKern basically refused initially to come back. And then the hero of the 11th hour, Alexis Kaner, who had shown up and, as we talked about, kind of became a third wheel to the production in terms of like actually supporting things and making things happen. He had ended up basically befriending McKern. And the deal was that Alexis would be there throughout all the scenes that McKern had to film for the finale, because McKern did not want to be alone with Patrick McGoohan again.
Miserable.
Yeah. And by all words, right, like Kaner did it. He was there the whole time, right? He's in the episode, but even when he wasn't in the episode, he was supposedly like just off camera, right? Like in the scenes where McKern was.
That's awful.
It's pretty bad.
That's like I can't have a one-on-one with this person. I have to have a witness so someone else can see the awful things that he says to me.
Yeah, it's like when you bring a dog in to like a cheetah exhibit, because otherwise the cheetahs are going to be too stressed out.
Yeah, whenever I go to fight a cheetah, I always bring a dog to disarm it.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know if this is true, right? That this could all be apocryphal, but this is like, I don't have quotes. I don't have any firsthand quotes on this one. But this is a commonly said thing.
Sure. Yeah, it's tricky because as we talked last episode. We talked last episode about the stresses of McKern and McGoohan working together and the conflicting reports of what it was like, even from the two of them as the firsthand sources of the thing, both as like the people that were going through it and as professionals who presumably wanted to continue working in the same industry. And how that can distort or otherwise like inflect what it is that you might say when you're trying to report back about the truth of a thing.
Totally.
And consider that past that point, we've had 60 years basically of the show has existed as this legendary, peculiar object. Of course, people have started telling stories. People have started inflating reports that they have heard to like further enhance the mystique around this thing, right?
Totally.
And so
totally.
That's not to say I don't think that's true. It's like it's only to say like it's very, very difficult, I think, to get people to be straight about like what it was like making The Prisoner, because everyone wants to turn it into a story.
Totally. I completely agree with you. And I don't think
Except
that
me,
diminishes
the one
it.
true individual.
Of course. I don't think that diminishes it. In fact, I think that it increases like its potency as an object, right? Which could be like, you've mentioned this before, right? You can view it from all these different angles, right?
Yes.
Anyway, regardless.
Right, I think just to put a cap on that, I think regardless of whether it is precisely true or not, I think part of what it does is it demonstrates the personality for which McGowan has had constructed around him about this part of his life.
Totally. I completely agree.
Which I think we'll have a lot to say more about in the fallout of this episode.
Yep. Ah, hey.
Yeah. He goes to the wasteland. He fights super mutants.
What I think is kind of he does.
Yeah.
He blows up a town with a nuke. What I think is kind of funny, though, in like the ordering of this is they do all this stuff to start the resuscitation process. They start working on giving him a shave and a haircut, 2 bits. And then they just like leave it there. They're like, okay, so that's going to happen in the background.
Maybe it takes like 20 minutes. I don't know.
Maybe it does. But it's really funny that they do it this way and they don't just like roll that in together. I do think it's nice, right? Because it means we can go directly from 48 into 2 without like any time in between, right?
Yes.
To like lose any of that tension. But
Totally.
like it is funny that they basically put McGurn in the oven. They're like, he needs a minute.
Yeah.
Let him bake.
I appreciate also that it basically puts the big prison cell up on stage right away for us.
It does.
Yeah.
So that can be in the background. That's good too.
Yep. But yeah,
So
they pull him out. If you haven't watched this episode, they wheel him out. They put him in a chair. They tie some electrodes to him. They start like hitting him with the paddles, but they also spray his entire face with shaving cream and then put a big pillow on it.
It's awesome.
It's so good. It's like they're gonna like polish his face so he turns into the monkey Jesus from Ecce Homo.
That's probably what it is.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the rest of the episode yet, so I assume that's what happens.
I feel a new man.
Anyway, so then we're back to our prisoner, our president. That's important to not to mix up. Our president, Kenneth Griffith, who is, as you mentioned, he's like the MC of the episode.
Right.
And so he introduces this first bit, which is going to be 48, aka Alexis Kaner, doing his best rendition of Dem Bones.
Yeah, he's basically demonstrating 3 forms of rebellion, only one of which is good. And this first one, represented by number 48, is youthful rebellion. Yeah. Talk to me about Alexis Kaner.
I mean, what's more can we say?
He's wearing a top hat?
He's wearing a top hat. He's dressed up. He kind of looks like what band dressed like this? A lot of British like punk bands at the time.
He's very mod.
Yes, there you go. Yeah. And he's speaking with an incredible Cockney accent, which seems to be like the one accent he can do, as we've learned previously.
Yeah, black suit, big frilly open shirt, very long chain with a bell on it, white shoes.
Yes.
Very like scuffed up as if just pulled directly from the London streets. Flower in the lapel of his top hat. Yes. Very like thrift store chic.
Totally. I mean, I think he looks great. There's some like notions of like flower child hippie stuff in here, right? There's some notion of being like, mod or like a punk, right? It's just a general, he's like an amalgamated notion of like youthful rebellion. Right.
A kid who doesn't want to do what his dad tells him to do.
Yeah, his dad, the judge.
Yeah, he calls the president dad, which is very, very amusing.
And daddy, and he says, got him from you, dad.
The bones is yours, dad.
The bones is yours, dad. Alexis is great. What a delight to have him around. And so he starts doing Dem Bones. He riles everybody up.
He sings it over and over again.
He runs around the place going crazy. Everybody's in a tizzy.
Armed guards are trying to chase him. They can't get him because he's too wacky. The council,
too wacky. That's the reason.
That's it. The council is all like singing and dancing along with it. They can't get enough of it. They're super on board.
Yelling, like it's hard to tell.
I mean, there's a little bit of both, right? Where they're like,
yes, definitely.
I guess in this first bit, they're actually like yelling and chasing him, but then they come around to like, oh, this tune's got some rhythm to it.
Yeah. This is fire, as the kids say.
Who stops him?
Why? There's a voice from off camera, which is interesting because if we remember Die 6 Die, that's also off camera.
Yes, a lot of ADR.
Voice, which yes. It's McGowan's voice, and he just says, young man.
Yeah.
And that, like, draws him to a halt.
Yes, it does. He says, don't knock yourself out.
Give me the rest. Young man. And this seems to be what he was after, right?
48? Why so?
Well, I mean, we even get a little bit of this. Like, the crimes that are being read out for 48 include that he was unwilling to use his number.
Ah, sure. Number 6 is the only one that addresses him not as his number, and that's why it works.
Well, we even get directly from there, right? That like the president is like, no, we appreciate it, sir, but we can't call him young man. And then the I happens. The we
yes,
number
yes.
one I. And the president goes, okay, number 1 says it's all right. I guess he's young man now.
Should we talk a little bit more about number 1? We sort of glossed over it a little bit.
We should talk a little bit more.
Number 1 is played by R2-D2. And he's much bigger than you'd think from the movies.
Bigger R2-D2 theory is
That's
here,
right.
everybody.
Mm-hmm.
He has a big red one, but Brennan's completely right. He does bleep boop exactly.
No, you know what? It's subtle, but this is a clone. You can tell because it's R2-D2.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Not everybody's read the Thrawn books.
Excuse me, that's from Dark Empire.
It is.
Yeah. No, wait, it is from the Thrawn books. Never mind.
It is from the Thrawn books. Yeah, Dark Empire would never had an idea as good as when you clone someone, the vowels in their name get longer.
No, Dark Empire is, I think, where Luke is from.
I'm sorry, yeah, you're right. Yeah. No, I think, and this is so unimportant, but I'm pretty sure it is
Have
the
you looked
Thrawn
at this
books
website?
that Luke is
It's got so much stuff on it.
Oh my God, we can't keep doing Wikipedia. We're not that kind of podcast. We don't just read Wikipedia. We put in the work. We watch Danger Man. We watch Columbo. Anyway.
Number 1 seems to be represented by this big green light that beeps and boops.
Yes.
That it seems like only the president can like understand / interpret / translate.
Yeah, it's a bit like how Luke Skywalker talks to R2-D2. Right? We get bleep boops, and then the character, either Luke or the president, responds in such a way to clarify what those bleep boops were actually saying. Mm-hmm. And what's kind of interesting, we know from the end of the episode, this is a rocket. But as far as we can tell here, this is just like a giant like robot, basically.
Yeah, you'd be well within your rights to think, oh, number 1 was a computer the entire time.
And there you go, Brendan. Your long-held theory of everyone in the village is robots. It's finally justified. Number 1 was a giant cylinder robot.
Excuse me. There is a world of difference between everyone's a computer versus everyone's a robot. Don't pander to me. I've watched Danger Man, you son of a bitch. I'll kill you.
You will.
This ain't nothing to me.
Guy like me. Anyway. So now we get a really good back and forth between, now that he's calmed down, between 48, aka young man, and the president. And I do think, one of the things we kind of got off it because we talked about number 1, because there's so much in this episode. I do apologize to the listeners if we're a bit scattered.
Sorry, listeners.
Sorry, listeners. What's interesting, right? Throughout this whole series, we've had examples of people using names as titles instead of numbers as names.
Yes.
Right? We can think about the general. We can think about the professor. We can think about the colonel. And now we have the president, right?
Yes, although he's never called the president in the episode. We only know that from the closing credits.
It's true. And from, the script and stuff like that. But it's interesting, like, who gets the title like this and who gets a number.
Yes.
Right? People who are brought in from outside the village are allowed to have these kinds of names, to be called things like young man, right? Mm-hmm. As opposed to people in the village, in the society, they're only allowed to be numbers.
Right.
Except for the special dispensation.
If you are inside the magic circle, you need to play by the rules of the game.
There it is.
Yeah.
So we get this really great, like, back and forth between the calm down 48 and the president, right? Mm-hmm. where first of all, the president says, okay, yeah, we're going to do this. Those in favor, everybody raises their hands. He gavels, carried, we're obliged, and that they're going to call him young man. And Patrick says, don't mention it, Dad, which is great.
It's good.
It's good. Every shot that they go back to Patrick McGoohan, where he's like a lord on this throne, surrounded by armed guards. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's as if it's all been building up to that.
It's as if, like, remember back in The General when I was like, this is the saddest possible thing, where it was number 6 standing to the right of number 2. This might be sadder.
Interesting.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
But in another way, it is like, it is the metaphor made real again. Number 6, Patrick McGoohan, is what it's all about. Patrick McGoohan is the king, is the king of this series, and he is on his throne, right?
Yes. More to say in about 20 or 30 minutes.
Yeah. If that, it'll be an hour. But the president says, young man, because he can't quite say it that way.
Sure.
And young man says, you got the message.
I just got it.
What gives?
You've never been with it, I mean with us.
I'm gone away.
But you were here, then you went and gone.
Got the word?
Oh, yes.
The bright light, Dad. Got the sign.
Sign?
The light.
Light?
The message.
Then you went and gone.
Why?
Give it to me, baby.
That's it.
Give me the rest.
Give. All you want's give. That's it.
That's it.
And take.
That's it.
Take's all you want.
That's it.
Take.
That's it.
Take.
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 Take. Take. Take. Now you're high.
I'm low.
Give it to me, baby. Confess.
Oh, Dad, I'm your baby, Dad. You owe your baby something, Daddy.
Confess.
The bones is yours, Dad. They came from you, my daddy.
Confess. Now you're hip.
Hip, Dad. Hip.
Confess.
And a hip bone.
Confess.
And a thigh bone.
Confess.
Shin bone, knee bone.
Confess.
Backbone, all yours, Dad.
Confess.
Really good.
It's good. It's kind of my sister described it as a nightmare. It's very disorienting. It's unlike anything that's ever been in this TV show that we've been watching.
Sure.
It's very entertaining for sure, but it's like, what the hell is going on right now? What are they talking about? What's happening? Why is this song playing again? And notably, when this song starts in, it's like the actual recorded version of it.
Yes.
Not just Alexis
Yes.
Kaner singing it out loud.
Yes, it is specifically a version from a Canadian group. I had this somewhere. Here we go. The Four Lads, a Canadian vocal group.
Yep.
1967 and 1968.
Yeah.
It's very funny.
It is not originally a Canadian song. It is a spiritual. And McGoohan had a really, really specific idea of using this one. He sent Eric Michael on an errand. He said, get me every version of this song that you possibly can find, and we'll listen to all of them and see if we can find one that we want to use. And he basically came back with 8 different individual recordings from London record shops.
Makes sense.
What's the song about?
Why, you heard about this guy named Ezekiel?
Let me look on the website.
The Wikipedia website.
Yeah.
Here we go. Wikipedia, Book of Ezekiel.
Yeah.
The third of the latter prophets.
Wait, what the hell? Tell me about Ezekiel.
I'm not going to tell you about Ezekiel.
I thought
He's
you had
not
the
important.
article open.
I do, actually.
Okay. Give it to me, baby.
So this Ezekiel is one of these prophets, right? Israelite priest, right? One of many prophets that were sort of, coming to them because, once again, Israel was on that thing it was always doing where it was worshiping other gods besides Yahweh.
Crazy.
So silly. But this specific bit, Dem Bones, is a reference to the Valley of the Dry Bones, right? Where there's basically this prophecy of one day these bones are going to be resurrected at God's command, right? Which is sort of this realization of the New Jerusalem, right? This like rebirth of Israel, right?
Right.
And so the song is about, loosely, is about that process of resurrection, right? That's why we have like toe bone connected to foot bone. It's like being reconstructed. And then hear the word of the Lord is because the Lord is reconstructing you, right?
Right.
It was originally written by James Weldon Johnson, was originally put to text by James Weldon Johnson. It's unclear if it was a song previously before then, in the like 1800s or late 1800s, early 1900s. Great song. You as a child may have sung this song just as a like toe bone connected to the foot bone, and then you like point to the different parts of your body. I don't know about you. I did it as a kid, especially in like Sunday school.
Yeah, of course. Of course. I went to 10 years of Catholic school. Of course I was pointing at my toes.
Dem bones gonna walk around, right? Because it's the idea of the bones have been brought back.
That's right.
So there's this notion of resurrection, right? Of these things that were dead being brought back. And I mentioned earlier, right? Like number 6 is wearing this outfit that he was told was of a dead man, of a man who didn't exist. There's this notion of returning or a resurrection, right? So
yeah, I mean,
there's some stuff.
He's in the underworld right now.
He is, and soon he will be offered to return to the overworld.
That's right.
That's what they call it.
Yeah.
There's some interesting stuff going on here. We haven't mentioned it in a long time, but there's a lot of religious readings of The Prisoner.
Yeah.
And if we take this as like representative of, say, like Jesus Christ going into hell and bursts the gates of hell open, right? There's some pretty clear connections there. More of it that we can talk about in just a little bit.
In the commentary that I was listening to, Eric Michael asked Noreen Ackland, so do you know anything about the religious readings of the show? And she was like, no. No, of course not. No, no, I don't know what any of it's about. Bless her heart.
Bless her heart. Anyway.
Noreen, if you're out there,
hit us up.
Listen to our podcast. No, don't. I mean, if you want, don't feel obliged. Like, we're not going to have you on, but
we're about to be done.
We're about to be done.
Then we get like the reading of, after they regain order, we get the reading of 48. He's found guilty, right? The delegate who finds him guilty or who reads out his crimes is the anarchist delegate, which is fun because it's similarly playing into this notion of like rebellion or whatever. Even the anarchists don't like this guy, supposedly.
Sure.
And the guy who's playing the anarchist delegate is Michael Miller, who has been in the show quite a bit, right? So he was the guy who was in the buggy for the general, right? You're a bunch of prefects, right? He was the guy who was like tearfully, confessing to being unmutual.
Oh,
right?
yes.
I don't think he was actually calling himself unmutual at that point, but regardless, right? He's been there a lot. And it's interesting that he's here again because, if you're like me and you love to draw little red strings between things, you could imagine a world where we'd like, yeah, it's all the same guy, right?
Sure, yeah.
And he's just been playing these different roles throughout the thing, and like, here's the role they have him playing now. Yeah,
passing judgment on those like him that are acting out from youthful ignorance or belligerence. It's worth saying that like when the recording version of Dem Bones gets going, that's when the chorus really gets into it, where the assembly starts like clapping and dancing along to it. And then the president is like clapping and glaring at him and going along with it. I take that almost as like, there's something inextricably attractive about youthful rebellion, such that even the establishment can see its appeal, even as it casts judgment on it.
I think it's a really good reading. I mean, they have him dressed, like he could be a member of some sort of rock band at this point.
Oh, totally.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like a rock star.
Real sense. Yeah, there's a real sense of like, young rock stars playing music that even old people find catchy.
Sure.
Right?
Exactly.
The way they carry away Alexis Gaynor is great.
Yeah, he does the Christ pose, and they just pick him up by his arms and lift him up into the air.
Yeah, and he still just has his legs crisscrossed applesauce. It's great.
It's good.
It's fun stuff. They put him up against the pole again that he was strapped to earlier, one of those boy elevators going up and down.
They defer sentencing until after Six's inauguration.
Yes. We didn't mention it, but earlier they talked about the transfer of ultimate power that Six was going to receive.
Ninjas.
What?
Ninjas.
He's gonna get ninjas?
No, he's gonna like real ultimate power. He's gonna become a ninja.
Oh, I see. Okay, I understand what you're saying now. I thought the idea was that he was gonna get command of a legion of ninjas.
Yeah, of course.
The secret village ninjas they've had off
Of
screen
course.
the whole time.
Why wouldn't they?
That was it. That if this was filmed in the 80s, that would be what it was.
Without a doubt, yeah. I mean, Shindashima comes pretty close.
It does.
Kids these days don't know about real ultimate power.
They don't.
Yeah.
Speaking of real ultimate power, the next we get the resuscitation complete. Number 2, the oven dings. We get Liam McKern. He's out of the oven.
When we go to break, we get the clip of the weird science thing spinning around that's resuscitating him, and Kenneth Griffith laughing like a madman.
Yes.
What's going on there?
There's about to be a theme of laughing like a madman.
There is, yes.
Because number 2 is similarly like laughing like a madman throughout this whole thing in the background. It's like archival footage, right? Him when he had all his hair. So it's in the script, they were actually supposed to have it be the same effect as from Speedlearn when they did the resuscitation on screen.
Sure.
Which I think is interesting, but is perhaps like, the metaphor is a bit mixed there in terms of what's happening.
Totally. I see the parallel being drawn between like he is having this laughing fit, and then McKern is going to have a laughing fit once we see him. Yeah. It's so out of character for every other instance that we see the president behaving. Like here, he just seems to be like a cartoon supervillain in some way, where it's like, ha ha ha, bringing someone back that just to punish them.
I mean, in some ways, right? But like, we can also take this as like, number 2 as comic book supervillain, and we have gotten a bunch of number 2s who are like Machiavellian almost.
Sure, totally.
Right? Hammer into Anvil comes to mind, right? And so there's a notion of this is the role that you were in. You were supposed to be this Machiavellian supervillain, and now you've turned against it, right?
Sure. Yes.
But interestingly, like he introduces this as though number 2 is a form of revolt, right? Like as if he has rebelled already, but he hasn't. He did the job. He did the job to his death. He did the job so well. Mm-hmm. It feels to me more like this is like prescient. Like he is about to turn against them, right? Via the fact that he has been resuscitated, it's in this moment that he's going to decide, I'm done with this, right?
Maybe okay, sure. I could see that being the cause for his laughter of like, I'll give you a show. I'm going to demonstrate someone who's going to betray me just as I resurrect them, just as I bring them back from death.
Or even like acknowledging how ridiculous it is.
Sure,
right?
Yes.
Like when he's later, this is jumping ahead, but when number 2's Liam McKern is in the tube later, that we see before he goes up to the number 1 room, before Patrick McGoohan does, he's just laughing his head off there too.
Right.
Like it's a ridiculous situation. They bring back this guy who was their most loyal servant.
Who literally worked himself to death in order to try and achieve their aims, and in many ways succeeded.
That's certainly what I think. But then when they bring him back, he's immediately like, what the hell, man? Like, I did all this for you, and this is what I get? Like, of course I'm going to, like, do a staring eye contest with number 1 until he blinks.
You can't even let me rest in peace.
Right. Yeah. Anyway, that's how I take it. But I think that more generally, again, like, logical thought is only going to get you so far in this episode.
Sure.
A lot more of it is gestural, is dreamlike, right?
It is. It's that moment simply sticks out for me because everything is so considered. Everything is so deliberate and intentional. I have to imagine that there was like a direction that was like, and the president starts laughing here, and I want to know why that is. Sure. And I think the irony of what's about to happen with number 2 makes sense for that laughter. Like that squares it in my mind.
But also, I think that feeling that you have of there must be an explanation, that's, I think, what makes this episode a masterpiece.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. That's
because
that's a good point.
There's so much here, which, like, in many ways, it explains the longevity of this show. There's so much here that feels intentional, but where the intent feels just obfuscated enough that you can't get at it.
Right.
Right? And to that extent, I think it is a masterful object, right? That it would have that effect on audiences for like 60 years is incredible. I want to talk about this maybe a little bit more right at the end, but like even compared to other surreal shows, right? I think a bunch of shows that are marketed or are understood culturally as being surreal have much weaker endings than this. Because they either collapse down the mystery into nothing and they like explain it all away, or like it's so gestural that you can't like hold on to anything, right? I think it strikes a really good balance.
Or worse, there is an answer and they give it off screen.
Oh, or they give it on screen. Hi, Lost. Anyway. So we get to Liam McKern. He's back.
He's
Liam
back.
McKern's music, as we said.
He's got a fake mustache. He feels like a new man.
It's a real mustache. This is really his mustache.
I heard that it was a fake.
Oh, I thought that. Oh, maybe you're right.
Yeah.
But regardless, he's fantastic.
That's the
I
mystique
love
of the
McKern.
show, baby. Is it real or not? We'll never know.
You said it already. He comes in and says, "I feel a new man."
Yep.
Right.
He wakes up with this, like, again, brought back from the dead.
Yes.
With this mystified, confused look on his face. And then within like half a minute takes control of the room.
Yes, he's so good. He's so strong.
Literally like preaching to the choir up on the stage, takes the president's place up on the platform and begins performing. Just instantly like has control of the room.
Yeah. I mean, but before that, he does say hi to number 6.
He does say hi to number 6. He says, "Well done, the throne at last."
Yeah, I knew it. It had to come, right? Like that, this whole number 2 bit, this whole McKern bit is so juicy to me.
It's good. This is TV.
This is TV. The fact that McKern, especially how he reacts later, like McKern, as we said, from the very first time he showed up in Chimes, feels like his character is someone who got it. Like who understood what the village was about better than a bunch of other people in the village. Right? The fact that he recognized McKern was destined for the throne. The fact that in Chimes
McGowan.
he says, is that number 6. Same thing. But McKern says like, is that an order number 6 in Chimes? Right?
Right.
Like, dang, man, he figured it out.
He did, but he's not yet willing to let go of that authority that he wielded. Welt?
Right.
No.
Yeah, sure. He welted it.
Yeah, right onto the floor. He
welted
gestures for Angelo to come with him. Angelo does not budge.
Yeah, and he says, interestingly, new allegiances such as the price of fame and failure.
Yes.
Right? So the and failure is really interesting, right? Because there's a notion here of him thinking, oh, I failed. I didn't succeed at, degree absolute.
Right.
I don't know if that's right.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost too tangled to like pick apart. Like you have to imagine like, okay, does number 2 think degree absolute really was about trying to get him to say why he resigned, or was it a test to try and get him all the way on side with the village? Or did he have suspicions, or was he as much of a pawn going in one way or the other? Difficult to read.
Yeah, well, I have some thoughts on it, but they're for later. One other thing I do like before we get completely off the blue pyramid with McKern, McGowan gives a little smile as he shakes hands with him.
Oh yeah, he's not displeased to see him.
No, not at all. And I think this is just fun in terms of way back in Many Happy Returns, right? I was making arguments about like 6 has gotten to the point where he can be friendly with a number 2.
Totally.
And it's just more evidence of that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting, I was saving a little bit of this for later, but I think the satisfaction with which he sits upon the throne and the degree to which he has professed, oh, I want to escape, but then given the opportunities here to escape, demonstrate that maybe if that was ever his goal, and I kind of doubt that it was, that's not necessarily what he's after here. He's after being in charge.
Potentially. I think let's get to number one, but because first we have a fantastic speech, a fantastic McKern speech.
Indeed.
Right?
My lords, ladies, and gentlemen, a most extraordinary thing happened to me on my way here. It has been my lot in the past to wield a not inconsiderable power. Nay, I have had the ear of statesmen, kings, and princes of many lands. Governments have been swayed, policies defined, and revolutions nipped in the bud at a word from me in the right place and at a propitious time. Not surprising, therefore, that this community should find a use for me. Not altogether by accident that one day I should be abducted and wake up here amongst you. What is deplorable is that I resisted for so short a time. A fine tribute to your methods.
In which we get some cool little backstory hints, right?
Yeah.
He was in politics before, and that's why, he thinks at least why they grabbed him. Mm-hmm. And he talks about coming over to their side, right, really fast. And then he has a staring contest with number one.
Number 6 asks, did you ever meet him in person?
Yes.
The idea of which is so preposterous to number 2 that he laughs aloud.
He does. But again, the way he says, meet him, right? Like, I think this number 2 at least suspects the truth of what's happening here.
Oh, without a doubt.
And it's so funny to him that it's 6 who's asking him this.
Mm-hmm.
He also does speculate, right? Like, how did they kill him, right? He asks, was it in the drink?
Right.
I pointed out last time in Once Upon a Time, McGowan, asks no additions, right? If you go back and look, it's also not clear if McGowan ever takes a sip from his drink in that episode. So it's very possible it was poisoned, and McGowan, for some reason, knew not to take a drink of it, or suspected. But he gets into this staring contest with number 1, sort of turning against, talking himself in this monologue into, like, number 1 is basically a coward, right? He won't show his face. He won't ever meet my eye.
I shall give him a stare.
And he does, and number 1's big robot eye blinks first.
McKern spits at him, and the thing just, like, overflows with fog.
Yes.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah.
At which point, the assembly is, like, freaking out again. They love shouting and yelling.
They love a performance.
They do love a performance. We get then number 2's chance to do the big spread-armed Christ pose, right?
Sadly, they don't pick him up.
They don't pick him up for poor number 2.
Mm-hmm.
McKern didn't get picked up and carried around. But notably, like, unlike Alexis Kainer's number 48, he, like, positions himself to be put in the cuffs, right?
Yeah.
So there's still a notion.
He seems to have accepted, like you said before, how absurd all this is, how ridiculous a situation he's been put in. He's been brought back from the dead to be re-imprisoned. Sure, why not? And he's laughing all the way along. And we get the episodes only be seeing you as he disappears into the ground.
It's true. He descends even further. Mm-hmm. Descent being such an important thing.
There he goes.
And finally, he's been waiting for so long, but they finally get to number 6. They get to number 6, and we get clear what the sort of offer is, or the choices that they're putting in front of number 6. Right?
Well, but before we get to the choices, what does the president say about his rebellion that sets him apart from the others?
At the other end of the scale, we are honored to have with us a revolutionary of different caliber. He has revolted, resisted, fought, held fast, maintained, destroyed resistance, overcome coercion, the right to be person, someone, or individual. We applaud his private war and concede that despite materialistic efforts, he has survived intact and secure.
It's the only true one. It's the only good one, right? This is the pure individual, right?
What
do you have?
what characteristics of the only good revolt do you take from number 6 as opposed to 48 and number 2?
I mean, so there's a bit where number 6 is kind of outside of society.
Sure.
In some ways, right? He's, the fringe is defined by its exclusion, right? He's at the edge of things. He is not, number 48, who assumably had maybe some position like the night manager, supervisor, who was also number 48. He's not number 2, who had this like explicit thing in society. He had number 6 that was sort of like a withheld position. So certainly that's a bit of this, right? What do you think about this?
I think this is perhaps the most damning thing that anyone could say about the sort of way that number 6 has conducted himself over the course of the series.
Sure, say more.
I think what the president is saying as the representative, as the leader of society, is saying, well, children don't know any better.
Yeah.
And people who join and then turn against us later are traitors and are to be cast out for their disloyalty. But both of these are loud, and both of these are ill-mannered, and both of these don't play by the rules in a way that we find befitting. But you, sir, are well-mannered and nicely dressed and well-spoken. You know what? You can do whatever it is that you want to do, because really, you play like a nice, well-mannered British gentleman.
Yeah.
And it really doesn't matter to me. It really doesn't matter to me what you think, because you, just by virtue of the way that you behave, fit into society just fine. You're the perfect rebel. A rebel that doesn't really do anything.
And this is the only way that I think that it is. I can forgive them for like having this last episode be so just white men all hanging out.
Sure. Yes.
Because like this is how white men talk.
Yes. You're one of us.
About other white men. Yes.
You're perfect. You know what? Why don't you be in charge?
Exactly. You could really imagine having a beer with him.
You could.
So they make the choice, right? This is the choice. You're right to call this out of like where the setup is here. They basically show him his house. It was for sale from estate agents Legou and Son, Legou being the set dresser for this episode, which is funny. And they give him $1 million in traveler's checks, a passport valid for anywhere, which, all right.
Yeah, I have one of those.
U.S. passports, baby. For now. And then they say you're free to go, right? Like lead us or go.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of the people who do religious readings, right? Read this moment as like the devil tempting Jesus in the desert.
Sure.
Which is wild because they're tempting him supposedly with the thing that like they were supposedly holding from him, right? It's as if God
the things that are already his.
In some ways, yeah. Or that were his, right? Were the person that he once was.
Sure. Yes.
Because, you're totally right that he is well-mannered now. But he didn't start that way.
I suppose that's true.
Remember in like Free for All, where he like socks some people and steals a boat and like tries to drive it away, and there's like a helicopter in the air, and they're like, "Don't hit him too hard. He's number 6. He's important."
Yes, I suppose that's true.
In many ways, this is a person they've produced.
Tamed.
This version of him. Tamed, if you like. Yeah. And so he descends from his president throne. President throne. Kingly throne. Also, they also bring him his car. The car is important for later.
Yes.
They
put the car up on the screen and they say, "Here's the keys to your house and the keys to your car."
Right.
It's not here in the cave. That would have been a different kind of ending.
Though.
Yeah, it would have been awesome.
And they start playing this song. I don't know what song this is. Do you know what song this is? As he goes to collect his things.
Gosh, I meant to call out a different musical thing earlier. Do you know what song plays when McKern first gets out of the chair when he comes back to life?
What is that?
It's an instrumental version of Dem Bones.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a resurrection, right?
It is. Is this the horns?
It's the horns. It's the ba 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 da ba da 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 da. That one.
I'm pretty sure they called it out in the episode that I was listening to, but I don't remember what it's called.
That's all right. It's a song that to me is deeply sad.
Yeah, it's very reminiscent of the horns in the very start of Love Is All You Need, which we heard earlier, which I think is part of why they chose it for this one. I think it's from sort of the musical collection of songs that they had available to just as a television developer.
Totally. They've done a lot of those.
Called Chapels, I think it's called. It's this musical database. It was periodically just filled up with stuff that they had bought the rights to.
Totally.
But yeah, he's invited to give a speech.
And he agrees. And this is very similar to in Free For All, right? He made the choice to go to the town council in Free For All, right? Even at the beginning of Once Upon a Time, when we were having number 2 go through number 6's file, right? That was one of the clips they brought up of him having the newspaper up, right? And trying to address the town council, be I'm trying to get through to these people.
Yeah.
So he's going to try again, right? He has not learned his lesson from that. And this is a really interesting and really sad sequence.
What happens?
He starts speaking, and he starts speaking with I. And immediately, all of the other people outside, all the masked delegates start repeating, I. And then he hits the hammer, gets them to quiet down. And he starts again, I. And they again, I. And they repeat this. And they get louder and louder. And McGowan is shouting something that we cannot hear because of the thunderous, sounds in the background.
Desperate to be heard.
Yeah.
The president staring coldly. Mm-hmm. And at a certain point, he simply starts talking. He simply starts saying as if somehow someone will be able to hear what it is that they've said, what he's said.
It's very much, Brendan, like the intro sequence for all these episodes, in which McGowan yells at George Markstein's character, but we don't get to actually hear what it is.
Right.
All we hear is thunder. He looks so sad and defeated after this.
This was supposed to be his moment.
Yeah.
He won, didn't he? Didn't he? The president raises a finger, and instead everyone says, hip, hip, hooray.
Yes. In the script, all it says is, it appears to be an important statement.
That's good.
There's a lot of theories about this moment.
Uh-huh.
And one of the most common ones is that watchers theorize that in this moment, he gives the real reason he resigned. And why he's so defeated is because they just don't actually care.
That's pretty
This
funny.
was all for this, and it wasn't that. I don't agree with that, but I think it's a really strong reading of the situation.
Yeah, that's a good take, I think. What do you think?
What I think we need to wait a little bit longer on.
Okay.
But we're really close now.
We are, because the president says, I think you're ready to meet number 1.
Now, isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
You are prepared to meet number 1.
Yeah.
That was the last bit. That was the last thing they needed, the last bit of prep.
Yeah. It was important that you do this before you go meet number 1.
Yeah. And then we're back in the exact, so he has to descend first. He goes where number 2 and 48 went, down a boy elevator.
It goes down
it was
another.
Always boy elevators.
That's right.
The secret of the prisoner was boy elevator. And he goes to literally the exact same set as they use from A Girl Who Was Death.
Yes, a bit more sci-fi looking, a little bit less French.
Right. They cleaned up a lot of that bric-a-brac.
Yeah. Very still reminiscent of the like Blofeld volcano layer in here. A lot of like chrome and glass and stuff like that.
Well, specifically, we have 2 glass tubes. One of them, Orbit 48, with number 48 in it, and Orbit 2, with number 2 in it.
Hey, what's up with these tubes? Are they going to get shot into space? Are they going to populate
orbit?
Are they going to populate another planet?
We're going to sprinkle the genetic material of 48 and 2 onto a new planet.
Well,
to create the perfect rebels.
Do you want to talk about the rocket here a little bit?
Sure, let's talk about the rocket.
So part of the reason there's a rocket here is because it was there for the girl who was death. Yeah. But you have to go a little bit deeper to get the history of why there was a rocket here. And it has to do with the closing credits. Do you remember the closing credits?
The pop, the bang.
The pop and the bang. Do you remember a discarded idea that they used with the penny farthing?
Yes. Where the penny farthing would become was it the galaxy?
Or
was it the sun and the earth?
It was a galaxy, and then the smaller wheel would become the earth. And the idea was that eventually you would see, as the show went on and we got more episodes, eventually that presentation would grow to have a rocket leaving the earth and headed to the galaxy.
Yep.
What does that mean? I don't know. But it means that even back at the very inception of the show, there was this idea of like, oh, well, maybe we're going to have a rocket ship involved in this in some way.
Well, what did when number 2 asked number 6 and chimes to Big Ben, what would he like to do?
Be the first man on the moon.
That's it.
Yeah.
There's this real notion, and if we go further, what's he trying to get everybody to do? It is not that number 6 is like, we're going to reform society. Society's broken. Let's reform society somewhat. It's let's get away.
Yeah. He doesn't want to take charge of society or otherwise rebuild it from the inside. He wants to leave. He wants to depart. He wants to go somewhere else where people will leave him in peace.
Yeah. I mean, at least
Space.
he did. The one place where I'll be free from capitalism.
That's right. Or yes, as you said, or so he did at one point.
Yeah, I don't think, I have I have not hidden the fact that I believe that number 6 changes throughout The Prisoner.
Totally.
And I think I have pretty good arguments, and I think I've made those arguments fairly well. I don't think there's any world where number 6 at the beginning of the season would sit on that throne. Regardless, there was a third orbit. It just says orbit and there's nothing.
Sure.
Which is blank, which is empty, which is suggesting there is a missing person here.
Correct. Just to put a cap on it, I think you can absolutely, regardless of number 6's motivations, I think you can absolutely see a version of this show, particularly with George Markstein at the helm, where the idea is we are a village where we are crafting a new society, and the climax of that show is we're going to take our new society and we're going to settle another planet with it.
That's possible.
That seems like a very George Markstein spy show idea.
It's possible. It's possible. We do, in fact, know what he intended for seasons 1 and 2. We don't know what he intended for the ending.
Sure.
But we're almost there. Angelo descends as well.
Yep.
His own separate elevator, so we can meet up with him. And then number 6 goes up the stairs, the spiral stairs that we saw earlier. And in the room where previously a bunch of Napoleons were meeting, we get a bunch of globes.
A lot of globes.
And then we get this figure, this hooded figure, who's holding one of those David Bowie Fushigi freak himself.
Wait, why did you say David Bowie?
Because of Labyrinth.
Oh,
Jim Henson's Labyrinth, right? There's a lot of contact juggling in that one.
Did David Bowie invent Fushigi?
He did, yeah. He went back in time.
Wow.
He did not. It wasn't even his arm. They did. Have you ever seen Labyrinth?
No.
I'm glad we're talking about this. This is important.
Yeah.
They keep doing these
We're
things.
We're about to talk about the climax of Fallout. Let's talk about Labyrinth instead.
It's our last tangent. It's not. They kept doing this thing in Jim Henson's Labyrinth where they had somebody else's arm go through David Bowie's costume so that he could do the contact juggling, because David Bowie couldn't do the contact juggling in the film.
That's great. That's terrific.
It's so good. And speaking of, other people being yourself. So he turns around with his little glass orb, right? He hands the glass.
Importantly, he's dressed like no one we've ever seen before, even compared to the hooded figures below. I guess that's not entirely true. He is dressed like a Grand Wizard version of the white hooded figures that we saw below, where he's full body white outfit, hood pulled down low, white gloves on.
Yes. I mean, so notably, the hood is exactly the same as the hooded people below. He also has a mask like them. So he's actually dressed pretty much like them, except for the big number 1 on his chest.
He's a big number 1 on his chest.
But we don't see that at first, not yet anyway, because first he has to hand this like glass ball to McGoohan, while in the background we have, again, clips of McGoohan as 6. Right.
Well, leading into that, we have another one of these things that the show is so good at, which is a video of number 6 watching himself doing the thing that he's doing. We spoke about this in A, B, and C and some other spots. So McGoohan can literally see himself approaching this figure. And so, theoretically, that figure also could. But then it switches to the clip from the very first episode where he says, "I will not be stamped, numbered, filed. My life is my own."
And it's when we get to the end of this, My Life is My Own, that McGoohan grabs the glass orb, and in it, he sees repeatedly, over and over again, the final shot of every single one of the episodes, where an image of McGoohan's face rushes forward with Port Miriam in the background, and bars slam shut.
We hear his voice from the video, but it's not him saying the thing from the episode anymore. It's him saying, I, just as we see the big number 1 on the character's chest.
And if we think about, your favorite thing, Romans.
I thought you were about to say robots. I was so sure you were going to say robots.
No. Different R-O.
Yeah.
And their funny little way that they wrote 1, which is with an I.
Yeah. Looks very similar.
It sure does. And he rips off the first mask. Right after number 1 also gets to do his giant Jesus Christ arms spread wide moment. And there's a gibbering sort of gorilla or chimpanzee mask underneath.
He makes a face where he's like,
I'm not so sure about that one.
Yeah.
And then he rips it off again. And then it's McGoohan's own face.
Yeah.
Laughing hysterically.
Scream
laughing. He goes back to number 6, McGoohan, and he's scream laughing now. They're scream laughing at each other. And then they chase each other around the globes. And then number 1 finds a ladder and climbs up the ladder. And then laughing back down at him, number 6 closes the little seal on the ladder and slams it and locks it shut. The whole sequence is maybe 30 seconds. And this is going to be the next hour of our podcast.
What to say?
Number 1.
I am number 1.
Oh, you're number 1.
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. Dear listener, hi, I'm turning to the listener now. I'm breaking the fourth wall. Unlike Patrick McGoohan, who would never do something. Yeah, that's right. I have the power hammer. I've upgraded it. I put it in the coat room so I could grab it for today. There was a weak wall, and I'm breaking through it.
I hate you.
You cursed me. So we were obviously leaving hints all along, right?
About what?
Because you bastard. About 6 being 1, right? About McGoohan being 1. And I think I was, I can't speak for you, but you certainly joined me on this. But for me, at least, I think that this series is one where watching it through the first time, this reveal can feel like it makes a kind of emotional sense, right? But not really a narrative sense. But I think we've done a pretty good job of sort of calling out the ways in which there's actually a through line, right? We've been talking about it as this red thread, right? That connecting things going back from the very beginning.
Particularly if you're willing to join us on this journey of things are connected through themes and vibes rather than through explicit events that take place through time that make logical sense.
I mean,
there's a bigger,
I think there's a way,
there's a better payout.
Sure, totally. I completely agree with you there. But I think that like there is this like Markstein view of it that you can even get to even here at the end.
I think you can.
And some people do. But just to talk through it, right? Like in every single opening, when he says, "Who is number one?" they say, "You are number 6." And as people have pointed out, if you just add a little comma to that, it becomes
You are number 6.
Number 6, right?
Right.
Which is beautiful, hiding in plain sight. In Free for All, we get in Chimes, we get the "Is that an order?" number 6, right? Which we've used so many times. Mm-hmm. In Free for All, the "What happens if I win? You're the boss." Number 1's the boss. Which they even repeat in Once Upon a Time. It's one of those like callbacks.
Yeah.
Why does Rover kill the double? Right? In the Schizoid Man?
Right.
Why 12 trusts 6? Remember 12 in The General saying join the club in terms of trusting 6?
Right.
The answer that you asked me, who would have sent 12 to potentially break apart this experiment?
Maybe.
6 maybe guessing the secret code in Hammer into Anvil?
Maybe.
6 in Girl Who Was Death having foreknowledge of the caves and the rocket, right? The blue-eyed throne, the color of Magooan's eyes. And maybe most obviously, in all the shots where we see 6's flat, he lives at number 1 Buckingham Place.
That's big number 1 on one of the last shots of the show.
Yeah. It was always there.
Now, let's try and square this. just to go through the exercise. I don't think you can in a way that really and truly like makes sense.
Sure.
But let's go through the exercise.
Sure.
Is number 6 Fight Club? Like, does he have a split personality where like one part of his consciousness is number 1 and the other part is number 6 and he's trapped himself?
So there's some quotes here from Magooan.
I have some really
Chris
good quotes.
Rodway. Yeah. There's this Chris Rodway interview in the 80s where Magooan refers to one as an alter ego or a Jekyll and Hyde, right? Sort of situation, which would suggest a sort of like, and so there is a sense, again, Magooan, who's the allegorical guy, right? Who's the fantasist, who's reading this metaphorically, right? And what he says, here's the whole long quote. It's not that long. It's like 2 lines. What is the most evil thing on earth? Is it jealousy? Is it hate? Is it the bomb? When one really searches, it's only one thing. It's the evil part of oneself, which one is constantly fighting until the moment of our demise. Which is wildly Catholic.
It is. It super is. I have a follow-up from that exact same interview.
Sure.
I imagine a lot of people watched the last episode and expected a sort of conventional end, and the evil person personified as the number 1 we'd never seen. This mystery character that brooded over everything. What was he going to be like? What was he, a Jekyll? Not a Jekyll Hyde, no, I think they expected. More of a James Bond villain at the end. And I think they felt that they had been robbed by what they got. A lot did. Though I would argue against that. I don't think that they were robbed, because going back to the allegory, which is what it was, so you have to have an allegorical ending. You can't have Sean Connery looking at himself saying, "I'm going to kill you, mate." You can't do that. It doesn't work for James Bond. So to that point, yes, I think he's explicitly saying, like, if he had set up a Jekyll Hyde situation like the one that I just produced, where it's like,
right,
I'm your evil shadow, I'm your evil twin, or I'm like another part of your personality. I think if he was going to cast himself as number 1, then that's what people would have expected it to be. So I was misreading that quote.
Totally.
That's like him saying, like, he is a Jekyll, but he's not a Jekyll Hyde. He is
right.
More allegorical than that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So I think that the only way we can really talk about this is talking about Markstein's plan.
Okay.
Right. So I mentioned before, I mentioned in Once Upon a Time, the thing that I'd been setting up since our very first episode, that Markstein's plan was always that he was John Drake, right? I have a quote from Markstein saying, "There's no mystery. He was a secret agent called Drake who quit. Full stop."
Right.
Right? Markstein's original plan for the 2 seasons, right? This is from Markstein himself. I don't have a direct quote because it would be too long, but the summary is, in season 1, Six would go through everything that he was expected to go through, right up into the point where George left the show around episode 13. And in episode 13, after Once Upon a Time, potentially for the beginning of season 2, Six would be revealed to have been the architect of the village, right? So it was this notion of his idea was put forth as like, this is where we put people who are too dangerous, right? And in George Markstein's version, season 2 would be Six having accepted that role and having been convinced in each episode to bring other dangerous people to the village. So we would have seen Six as secret agent for the village, bringing other people who were too dangerous there.
Interesting.
And so, you know, if we think about McGoohan having to think about what's my actual ending here, right? Thinking about it for weeks, if not months, right? I think it makes a lot of sense that he still has this notion in his head, like from these conversations, arguments with George Markstein about how the series was going to end.
Right.
Right? And so you get this ending, this reveal in this moment. We are not yet at the ending that can fit into this Markstein version in metaphor.
Sure.
Right?
Yes.
This didn't literally happen. He didn't literally go into the room and number one was there cackling like a madman. But in this moment, he is confronted with the fact that he was always number one, right? Whether that means exactly what Markstein intended with it or not, right? The person who was trapping him was always himself.
Yeah, you could very easily picture a version of this where it's revealed that there was not another character in the room. It's just like him looking at this glass and like visualizing, maybe even hallucinating all of these things as they are happening as he comes face to face with himself in the glass.
Yes.
To the show's credit, it does not do that.
Yeah, to the show's credit, Brendan, because the terrible attempts at doing sequels to this just do that. So there's a couple of graphic novels, prisoner graphic novels.
There are.
And in both of them, just to get their names up, I had them up in one point.
Shattered Visage, I think, is one of them.
That is one of them. Yeah, Shattered Visage, and then The Prisoner, the Uncertainty Machine.
There you go.
Right? And in both of them, they make this sort of explanation, right?
Both of them treat Fallout basically as a dream, non-canon, as not having really happened the way that we see it happen.
Yeah.
And which I think has been both have been lambasted by Prisoner fans for that very reason.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, you know, this is, you know, McGoohan was the allegorical guy. McGoohan won, right? This is his version of the thing, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that any attempt to read this as like 100% logical, realist, like this happened, I think that's a fool's errand, right?
Totally.
Now, it is interesting that like he chases one away, gets him out into this upper compartment and seals him off in the rocket. You know, if we think about this in terms of this, like one as an alter ego or as, you know, another alter in a plural system, dissociative identity orders, whatever terms you want to use here, right? Like he's sealing him away. I think we have to think about this in terms of emotional sense. I have this quote. It's a little bit long, but I think it's worth it. This is from Tomlin.
Yeah.
Or actually, sorry, it's McGoohan and then into Tomlin, right?
Okay.
So McGoohan saying, who was going to be number one? Well, I'll level with you. Nobody knew that. Nobody knew that. The first person to discover that was after I dragged myself out of the office, and it was a complete after its 36 hours childbirth thing. You know, a lot of labor. We had the scripts run off very quickly, so I got a copy of this thing. Before I caught up with a few hours of sleep before working on Monday morning, I sat with David Tomlin, and we were having tea or something in some tea room, and I said, "You'd better read this." I gave it to him, and I just sat at another table and sipped tea until he'd finished. Then he gave it back to me, and he said, "I thought it might be you in the end." There's nowhere else to go. This is McGoohan again. Who could it be, you know? I wasn't going to ring up Sean or Roger or any of these fellas. Who could it be? I don't know who it could be, right? And so even if you can't get there in terms of the realist take. The fact that it makes this sort of emotional sense, that even David Tomlin, who's maybe the second closest person to the production at that point, can see it and go, yeah, I kind of thought that might be it, right? It does make a sort of sense.
I want to talk about like what McGoohan did after The Prisoner for a little bit later. Probably talk a lot more about that in our next episode. But I want to call out a little bit of this particular interview. You can see it on the discs that I was talking about earlier. It's called In My Mind. It was done in 1983 by an enthusiast named Chris Rodney, who basically wrote McGoohan a 2-page letter begging to interview him for Channel 4.
Yeah.
He basically got a list of requirements from McGoohan saying, like, definitely interview these people. Don't interview these people. They rented a house in Los Angeles, and right away McGoohan started directing the interview, like doing shots over and over and over again of himself, like coming in and doing different compositions. They were basically up until 4 a.m. doing these nervous takes back and forth. Does the entire thing, and then the very next day offers Rodney a blank check to take possession of the film so that no one else could ever see it. But he then agrees to do a second interview, which is where all these quotes are taken from.
Yeah. He's number one.
He is, well, New idea.
New idea.
The Prisoner is about, dang it, I'm sick of being bossed around by all the people making my TV show. I want to make my own TV show. Oh no, this is terrible.
It's potential. There's potential there.
Yeah. I mean,
like the reading.
Particularly if you think about like the amount of work that McGoohan has basically had to do all on his own, the things that it is like, I'm not going to excuse some of the things that he's said or done to people, but like obviously being overworked and abusing alcohol can cause you to do those sorts of things in greater degree. I think it really wore on him. I think it really like demonstrated like, oh, I don't ever want to be in charge of my own TV show ever again. This is ridiculous. Being number one is not for me.
You could definitely read the rejection that we're about to get to in that.
Yes.
Markstein had this to say about McGoohan's motivations. My feeling is that McGoohan wasn't very keen on doing any other series, to your point. What he really wanted to do, I think, was to play Brand. He had enormous success some years previously on the stage with Ibsen's Brand. And Brand personifies everything I think McGoohan would like to be. God. He was very good as God, so he wanted to play Brand again. He was very keen on setting Brand as a film, and I think that was really what he wanted to do.
Yeah, so Brand is about a firebrand, a preacher, basically, who is like very, very believes that he is God's only true child here on the earth and is here to pass judgment on all that he sees before him.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you get a real sense of like, this is a guy who thinks he's special, who wants control, who gets it and rejects it.
Yeah. After
chasing number one and locking him away, we don't even see like a moment of making the decision, right?
No.
We shoot back and forth. We can see that the president is now sitting in the throne chair, and all the delegates are just like walking around, like they're pacing anxiously, right? Like they haven't yet figured out what's going to come of 6 seeing 1.
Right.
Right. And it's almost like the executive producer of the show sitting around pacing anxiously, not knowing what's going to happen when McGoohan has control of the series.
Yeah, like the question that I was primed to ask there is, what do you think the president wanted to have happen when he sent number 6 in here? Because remember, he only sends him in after he seems to have been broken by his attempt to give a speech that no one listens to.
Let me pause. Let me answer that question right after we get to the gunfight.
Okay.
Because what happens here is that McGoohan grabs a fire extinguisher.
He does.
And he goes down and he just sprays these poor hooded people with the foam so they fall over.
Vitally, something very particular happens before he does that.
That's true.
Which is the true hero of the show, Angelo Muscat, makes a choice about who he's siding with.
It was never a choice.
Oh, yeah?
Angelo was always loyal.
To what?
Who was Angelo loyal to? To the ultimate authority.
To number 1?
Who's the ultimate authority? Yeah.
Interesting.
He's always been loyal to 6. This is what it's always been about. He's always been the arbiter. He's always been the one who's controlling the game. And when he sees where 6 is going with this, he immediately joins him.
Is he... So I agree, he has always been loyal to 6. Has he always been loyal to 6 because 6 is number 1?
I mean, this gets tricky, right? Because again, like, there's not like a logical coherency here necessarily.
Right. Yeah.
I think what we can do, again, we can think about this like in terms of emotional stakes, right? Like, Angelo knew number 6 was really in charge. And so all of this was for number 6. That's how I feel about it anyway.
Sure. Okay. I think there's, and I don't want to get too deep into it, but I think there is a possible reading of Angelo has been loyal to the machinations of the village. Sure. And has been won over by number 6's struggle. You know what I mean?
Maybe. I totally.
I don't think there's enough there to really like put that together. We certainly don't have a sense of interiority from Angelo, but
no. And we can see when does he go over? When does he start listening to number 6? Right.
Sure.
It's at the end of Once Upon a Time when 6 takes on this role of like the number 2.
Yeah.
Right?
Although I think you get shades of it in earlier episodes.
Sure.
Again,
he's certainly very respectful to him.
For sure. I think it's a big reach, but yeah, that's what I'm here for.
Regardless, these two incredible buddy comedy. I meant like buddy cop, like action fight scene.
It is pretty comedy. They're just like spraying these guys with foam. They are spraying these guys with foam, vast quantities of sticky foam, and.
And they basically spray these guys. They free 2 and 48 who immediately join with them. They put on the outfits. They take out some more guards. They take their guns. We see Patrick McGoohan with a Tommy gun.
Then McGoohan goes up to the control center and sets the rocket to launch.
While the president looks on, yelling for contact for control. Right, he's trying to get in contact with assumably number 1,
or the people that were inside. Controlling the rocket or whatever.
But then we get our quad of heroes. We get 6, Angelo, 2 and 48. Take the boy elevator up. Boy elevator revengeance.
And they just start spraying everyone with bullets.
They kill so many people.
And the Beatles' Love Is All You Need starts playing over the sea.
It's incredible.
It's crazy.
Awesome. It's so good. There's a bit of back and forth here. They call for the evacuation. A bunch of guys wearing like swimming outfits or diving outfits on bicycles show up for some reason. Don't worry about them.
Yeah, they're
not relevant. They're like frogmen for some reason. We get the village. We get our only shots of the village in this episode as a bunch of people rush for helicopters to be evacuated away.
We see roughly 35 helicopters take off.
It's ridiculous. Fun little bit of trivia. Don Chaffee is in one of those helicopters.
Oh, that's fun.
So even though Don Chaffee and McGoohan had kind of split at this point, he came back for a little cameo here at the end.
That's nice.
That's nice. All the alligators?
All the alligators.
The helicopters.
All the alligators swim away. They don't want to be here when the rocket goes off.
The helicopters go off. The rocket launches. We see somehow all we have happen here is we see Angelo driving the truck that the cage is on because all 3 of the others have gotten into the
There's
cage.
a really, really good shot where Angelo does the kind of like bow and gesture, but he's also holding an assault rifle in his hands.
It's really good.
Yeah.
And we get this just repeated shot of like the truck in first person perspective approaching a gate.
Yes.
Right? And then it bursts through as like the rocket timer ticks down to 1. The countdown ticks down to 1. The rocket launches. And then we see beneath the rocket, in a sort of grotto filled with smoke and slime, Rover.
Aww.
And he slowly dissipates into the slime, explaining why for the last 2 episodes I've been making slime and gack references.
While I Like You Very Much by Carmen Miranda plays.
Yes.
What do you think of this song?
The I Like You Very Much, or
yeah. Or I mean, if you have things to say about Love Is All You Need, I'm here for that too.
I mean, I think that both of them, my thoughts on them are basically the same, right? Which is that, like, clearly it's the contrast here is the point.
Yes.
We get frankly horrible things happening, but we aren't viewing them through the lens of this being a horrible massacre, even though it is, right? Because it's so ridiculous, the other things that are happening.
Yeah, it's cartoon violence. It is like... It is absurd to the point that the show has turned it into a slapstick comedy by signaling with these kinds of musical cues.
Exactly. And now we can do it. The very first episode, we talked about this, right? McGowan was kind of a weirdie. What wouldn't he do?
He wouldn't kiss those girls.
He wouldn't kiss those girls. He did end up kissing a girl, though not in his own body. He also wouldn't pick up a gun. And he does it here.
It's how he gets out. It's the thing that allows him to escape the village, theoretically.
Yep. Theoretically. I said it back in a town, living in harmony, right? Of like, this is the prisoner in miniature. Because it's the moment that he reverts to gun violence again, right? That like it all comes crashing into just this like gunfight. Literally, it's the same sort of gunfight there and here.
It is his acceptance that violence is going to be the method that I indulge in that signals to everyone else, oh, violence is on the table now.
Exactly. So now we get into, if we wanted to have a realist version of this, if we want to like actually take, is there some actual plan here for the village? The one that I like is a little bit different than the one that I see bandied around.
Okay.
I don't think why he resigned matters at all. This is not an unusual thought, to be clear.
Sure.
That's a common one. In the very first episode, we get why he resigned. In Arrival, they say that it was on principle. Remember this?
I do.
The number 2 at the time. Number 2 makes this excuse of why do they keep asking is they have to be sure that it was on principle.
Mm-hmm.
What are those principles?
Not going to use guns, not going to kiss girls. And
there's a few other things as well.
Yeah.
Right?
That make up how he conducts himself on a regular basis.
He won't, for example, use the term number 6 for himself.
Sure.
Right? That's a principle we see him break. Right? We also see him, not being willing to like use romance, right, to get somebody on their side. He does that against number 8 in Checkmate. Right? Where he like pretends to be nice to her, to like pretends to like get the locket from her.
Sure.
Right.
You could also charitably say that he has the principle of, I'm not going to ignore someone who is plainly in need.
Sure.
He doesn't go necessarily looking for it, but once he discovers someone, he follows through on that.
Yeah. You could also talk about how, he has this principle around escape of not engaging with the village.
Sure, although
which he has at first.
He does, but he also, I would argue more strongly, has a principle, sort of a Hannibal Lecter-ish, I will punish those who I deem worthy of punishment.
Totally. He gets there. So what if, Brendan, here's the actual thing, now that we've gotten all that. What if the point of the village was to get him to break all these principles?
To what end?
Well, if he quit on principle, what happens if he doesn't have those principles anymore?
Then he goes back to work?
Yeah. Isn't it weird, Brendan, that at the end he goes back as if he's going into work?
I mean, we have said so many times that, like, we've never explicitly have it told to us that number 6 was a spy. We get told, it gets gestured at, it gets hinted at. Certainly he seems to be someone of extraordinary physical capability, has a wide skill set, that kind of thing, but we were never explicitly told, here are the things that he does. Fighting commies, obviously.
Get those pinkos.
And what is it that he finally does in order to get out of the village? Is that he finally, like, grabs a gun and starts shooting at these weirdos in a bunch of masks and a bunch of helmets. Like it's a GoldenEye level, right?
Yep. And, if you think back to Once Upon a Time, what was 2 trying to get him to do? She was trying to get him to kill him.
Right? Yes.
You remember how I called him Batman? I've made repeated references. There he is. Hey, Mr. J. I made repeated references to Batman. This is why, right? Batman, if you're not familiar with him, has this principle around refusing to kill, right? He won't use guns. These are the weapon of the enemy, right? And there's lots of stories in which Batman breaks those principles, and it's usually really bad, right?
Or is drawn right up into the line, or challenged of like, you've got to kill this one.
Yeah. I've also repeatedly referred to McGowan as a knight, right? Knights, which also have a chivalric code, right? And in this episode, they call him only Sir. I have a quote from his autobiography. This is by Brenna Owen, who was an extra on The Prisoner. McGowan was so ordinary. I remember him queuing up with the local people at the Fish and Chips in Porthmadog. He was so down to earth and hated people calling him Sir.
Oh, that's funny.
And so to me, if you want to do this, like, you know, what was it all for reading? The thing that makes the most sense to me is they were trying to break him of his principles that he's had, this code that he has had, in order to turn him back into the spy they wanted him to be.
Wow.
If you get him, he will be better.
And now all of a sudden he's catching guys that are more dangerous than he is. At least according to the George Markstein version of the thing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
I think it works pretty well.
I think so too.
But again, and I just want to be clear here, this is not me saying this is the truth.
No,
right?
definitely not. Definitely not. Nor is it necessarily the one that you believe in.
No, I think it's just a really strong way that you can tie together a bunch of disparate stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about this. What I think of as being as like the epilogue of this episode.
Sure. We're driving down the road.
We're not even on McGowan at first, which is so good.
This scene is funny. This scene is straight up funny.
So good. It's so
There's
good.
some posh man driving a big, nice car down the highway, and he looks out his window, and then he double takes because there's a big prison cell being driven by Angelo, and there's some men inside dancing along to Dem Bones.
It's true. John Tatum is the guy who's driving this car, just to say his name. I think he does a great job playing into the comedy of this. McGowan's getting everybody coffee. It's clear that like Alexis Kaner, 48, is teaching to this dance.
That's
right?
good. It's good. Very
really
big,
good.
Big with nail and eye vibes from Kaner.
And then they let him off, right? They let Kaner off. They wave him goodbye.
Just by the side of the highway. He doesn't seem particularly inclined to go to wherever they're going.
We see him try to get hitchhiking one way, and then he turns and he tries to hitchhike the other direction because it doesn't matter.
Right.
Right? We get to London.
Yeah, I think we see a road sign somewhere in here, but sure enough, soon we get to the Big Apple itself. London.
That's right. There's almost like a police escort that like brings them in. They end up parking.
Yeah, I think there's a Bobby who wants to know what the hell is going on here because this can't be up to code.
Yes. So he like pulls Angelo over basically. Mm-hmm. Angelo and McGowan talk to the Bobby for a bit while we sort of get to enter into Parliament, the British Parliament.
McCurtain just sort of takes off and looks up because what does he hear?
Chimes of Big Ben.
That's right.
I'll never call you anything else.
Big Bill. It's called Big Bill.
Yeah, that's right. In the script, it was explicit that 2 used to be a member of the House of Lords. He says explicitly that he used to work there.
Right.
Right. But instead, we just get this silent bit of 6 like waving goodbye to 2 as he enters through the House of Lords entrance. Right. Indicating that at least 2 is like, you know, a high muckety muck of society, basically. 2 says specifically, I used to be a big lad there once. And 6 replies, yes. 2 says, think I'll just wander over and revive a few memories. And 2 ends with, in the script, be seeing you. We then get a long scene here of McGowan sort of speaking to the police, this policeman. We don't get to hear him.
Yeah, he's just sort of gesticulating as if he's explaining the whole show to him, as Angelo in the foreground just sort of watches dispassionately.
Yes.
There's a big cool dog, though.
There's a big cool dog, and he's not even Rover this time.
It's not Rover, unless.
And then we get that same song again. The song that was playing as he went to go get his stuff and to take the stage.
Yep.
As he and Magoon and Angelo go run for a double-decker red bus, classic. We briefly see the credits, right? So we see Alexis Kaner getting his credits.
These credits.
And his credit, sorry.
No, no. These credits are jumbled in a delightfully slapstick way.
It is. And then he gets to his house, right?
He gets to his house.
He gets in his car. We get Angela Muscat's credit. As he goes up to the door, we see the big number 1 there. The door opens with that kind of electronic noise that we've come to recognize for village doors.
Yep.
Six drives away as the song continues. It had gone out there for a second. We see Leo McKern now in a different outfit. And then the final shot.
Just to emphasize what it is that I was talking about. So we get Alexis Kaner hitchhiking.
Yep.
That makes sense. Angelo Muscat as he watches from the steps as number 6 drives away and then walks up into the door because he now lives there as his butler, I guess.
Yeah.
And that all makes sense and is very, very well framed. And then we got an aerial shot of the car driving away, and it just says prisoner.
Yeah.
It doesn't say Patrick McGowan, nor does it say The Prisoner, the title of the show. It just says prisoner. And then after that, we get a shot of Leo McKern very clearly in a different outfit than he was just a moment ago. And then we get the end of the show. It's like they forgot they needed to put Leo McKern in there, and also they forgot the name of the show.
Well, it's their credits, right? It's the name. And the name that they kept on using for Six's character in the script was not Six or anything else.
Or Patrick.
It was P.
Yeah, P.
Right?
Yeah.
For prisoner, right? So it's like they're crediting him. They're giving him the same credit here as they're giving to these other people.
But why are they giving that before Leo McKern?
Well, because Leo McKern's the star of the show. Come on. No, I don't know why they do it in this order, but I do think that the intention here is that, don't think of him as Six, don't think of him as Patrick McGowan, think of him as prisoner, think of him as everyman, right?
Sure. I can appreciate that. It's just with the jumble of Leo McKern there right afterwards, it feels sloppy in a way that the rest of the episode just doesn't.
Speaking of things which may not be clear because of the way they're framed, did you note that as he's about to get into his car, a hearse drives by?
I did.
Did you see who's in the hearse?
Yeah, it's the guy.
It's the Undertaker.
Yeah.
And then we get... Yeah?
Hey, did number 6 escape from the village?
Of course not.
What? That's his house. He's inside his house. That's his car.
His house. He's been there before. He has driven this car before. He has been in his house before. He was not free then. He is not free now.
Dang.
Yeah, dang. It's a shame. So earlier you had gestured at having a reading around there being a time loop involved here, right?
Sure, yes.
Do you still feel that way, or do you read this a different way?
I don't. Even when I suggested that, it was almost like you could view it that way. I don't think there's enough to... I think I know enough about the way these sorts of stories are put together that I can see room for that style of story given the components that I see here, and I could imagine Lego mashing them together in order to find that. I don't think that that is what this show is going for, and I don't think the evidence supports it even at a cursory glance. But I do think that there is a loop happening here, if not a time loop.
Sure.
Which is to say, I think it's telling that Six winds up back at the very beginning from when we first meet him, right?
Sure.
I don't really know what to do with it because I think that he is a different person than he was when he first began, or at least I used to. Does that suggest that because if you think of the village as representative of society, then there's a way you could view the show saying, no, you've always been a prisoner, and the fact that you're number 1 is ultimately useless because you can set yourself free in any way that you like. You are still going to be trapped by the constraints that society puts on you. You truly will have to go to an asteroid to live the rest of your life if you want to be separate from the rest of us. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah, totally.
So I don't know if this is it's a very ambivalent ending, right? It is, it's playing that sad, that trumpet music that is not necessarily clear if it's like heroic or ironically heroic.
Yes.
And so
exactly.
it's difficult to grasp on whether or not you think this is a 6 who thinks he is free, but actually we, the viewer, know that he is not free. Or if this is a 6 who has realized he will never truly be free, but is wiser for the experience and has come to accept it.
Yeah, it's ambiguous.
Yeah. What a dilemma.
What a dilemma. But I think that's in reading, that's in keeping with McGowan's goals.
Yes.
Right?
Deeply.
He didn't want this to be a series where like there was an ending and then people could stop thinking about it. Right? He wanted people thinking. He said of himself later in that same interview we were talking about that he was delighted with the reaction.
Yes.
Right?
And maybe we should say before that, unlike the reactions, people hated this.
Well,
People
there was a lot of
people were by and large confused.
There was a lot of intensity in the response.
Yes. I think a lot of people, it's fair to say, didn't pick up on what he was putting down. I think a lot of people
for sure.
wanted/expected a more conventional ending and didn't get it and weren't willing to engage with it on the level that he seemed to want to based on, it being an allegory.
Totally. It's what I was saying earlier, right? People want there to be the secret.
Right.
Right? The most common sorts of responses, I've been tracking prisoner-related fandom stuff for like 2 decades. And I see like 3 common types of responses. Either, well, that was meaningless. Like that was a lot of nothing. I hated that. Mm-hmm. Or here's my one specific interpretation, right? Like, oh, it's all about religion, or, oh, it's all about, nuclear war, or like warning people about nukes in general, right? Etc. Or that sure must be clever. I don't understand it, but it sure must be clever because of how confused I am.
Right. Yeah.
And I disagree with all of these because, again, I think the point was, and McGowan says this explicitly, he wanted people thinking, right? So here's this quote from the 6 into 1. As long as people feel something, that's the great thing. It's when they're walking around not thinking, not feeling, that's where all the dangerous stuff is. Because when you get a mob like that, you can turn them into the sort of gang that Hitler had. Which is a big jump to maybe like for him to just say that, right?
Right.
But I think there's a real sense of this being in the 1960s and a real reflection of like, the rise of fascism, which had been sort of to some extent combated. But a real sense of like, you don't want a society that like people aren't thinking, that people aren't being critical, that people are just going along with the society, no matter what the shape of that society is, right?
Right.
And so McGowan's ultimate goal, I think his ultimate goal, and based on what he's saying here, is that he wanted people to keep thinking and talking and arguing about what the prisoner meant. And to that extent, I think he completely won.
Here we are talking about it.
In many ways, this podcast is maybe the greatest tribute we can offer.
Right.
Right?
Worth repeating, I think, the prisoner is so in dialogue with the technology of the time.
Totally.
Ideology could be a very subversive thing. And I think particularly in this era, as we've said over and over and over again, we were seeing big revolutions in the way that information was collected and categorized and used and distributed to other people. The fact that he was the most highly paid person on television for a long time speaks a lot to that, right?
Yeah.
I think he had a very conscious grasp of what mass media culture was doing to people, right?
Totally.
You turn on the TV and it tells you the truth and you don't need to think about it any further than that.
Yep. And to that extent, I think that I've been frustrated in the past, like with Free for All, of McGowan like pointing at being like, here's problems, and then offering no solutions.
Sure.
Right?
Yes.
But here, at least, there is some notion of like, you have to have people who are being critical. You have to have people who are willing to like argue, right? Who are willing to engage with the thing, right? Who have to care about the thing, right? And to a large extent, this is how McGowan lived his life, right? We talked about before that like he and his wife loved arguing with each other, right?
Sure.
He would shout at people. And what he wanted was for you to shout back, right?
Right.
even if he didn't do a great job of communicating that with other people.
I have another quote. This also is from the Rodney interview about that. There was a thing I'd always felt that is the show, was sort of designed for 1984. That is not the year 1984, but the Orwell book. And it's ironic in some ways that it's running in England again in the tail end of 83 and into 1984, because remember, this interview was in 1983.
Sure.
Sort of 2000 and something, maybe there will be one or two people who want to see it then. But the thing one must never do, which is in some ways, maybe I shouldn't be doing this, that is the interview that he's doing. Talking to you and to the people who are going to view it, to hear it, to explain The Prisoner. Because in myself, I am still getting new interpretations, and I feel fortunate that in parts of it, I hit lucky. Those ideas, I hope, one can play with them forever. The sky's the limit, isn't it?
Totally. But I think there's this other thing that people often talk about with The Prisoner, right? Like, I think that this is again, I think this is a masterpiece. I think he did an incredible job of putting together this piece of art to accomplish the specific goals that he had, right? But people talk about it as if this like came out of nowhere.
As if they hadn't watched all the other episodes of The Prisoner.
Yeah, and even not even that, like the series, people talk about the series, like my dad literally like yesterday or 2 days ago sent me this thing of like Silver Screen's Facebook post where somebody was like, McGowan's crazy, wacky series, The Prisoner. Where did he come up with this? Was he on drugs
or something?
Drugs? And that's just ridiculous. Because like there are clear antecedents here, right? One of the things people don't talk about is that there was this play by Bridget Boland that McGowan like was in the BBC version of.
What's it called?
The play is called The Prisoner.
Huh, weird.
And it's about a cardinal being held in prison and asked repeatedly to confess to crimes he did not commit.
Give it to me, baby! His
captors using psychological torture to break him.
Yeah, weird.
In the play, it's just conversations mostly between the torturer and the cardinal, like a number 2 and number 6. McGowan played the torturer in the BBC production.
Yeah.
But his mom always wanted him to be a priest.
Aww. That's
and
fine.
So like, you know, there's this stuff with Brand, right? Like there's George Markstein's ideas. It's clear, I think, how as a writer McGowan could get to this moment.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't think it came out of nowhere at all.
Not in the slightest. Like we have gestured repeatedly at him playing in the allegorical spaces, at him bringing up themes, even if he doesn't necessarily have clear answers for problems or directions that he wants to go with. He has things that he's in conversation with.
Totally. That's it. That's the episode.
Wow.
We did it.
Pretty crazy.
Do you have any other notes?
Do we have any other notes about Fallout, the last episode of The Prisoner?
Because if not, I have one more thing. Because I said a couple episodes when you were complaining about this book, The Unofficial Prisoner Companion. I'm now holding it up at the camera.
I can't wait to hear what you have to say about this book.
So here's the thing, and now I'm turning again towards the listener. Brendan kept on saying this thing. He was saying that if you were just listening and you weren't watching, he got it. Well, if you were watching, I got you. Because my whole point of doing this was, unsurprisingly, like McGowan, I had a secret personal reason. And it's not some huge revelation or anything like that. Back in episode 1 in Arrival, I didn't say why I started watching The Prisoner. You did. Right? You talked about how you got into The Prisoner.
That's right.
How I got into The Prisoner is that my grandfather suggested that I watch it about 20 years ago. My grandfather, Eugene Guzdial, who passed away in 2018, shortly before I ended up moving to Canada and then was like trapped behind the border and so on and so forth. Because of this little thing called COVID. And this book, this Prisoner's Companion, this is my dad's copy. Because my dad's the kind of guy who, upon seeing a confusing show like this, is going to look to find if he can find a book that will explain it all to him. And so here's the secret. Here's my secret. Here's my big reveal. I'm dedicating this podcast to... I didn't think I was going to get teared up about this. I'm dedicating this podcast, my portion of it at least, to my grandpa. It's not a perfect guy. It's not a perfect show. But I thought that what I could do is if I could get some other people to watch this show that my grandpa got me to watch, that would be a pretty good way to like honor that. So if you're watching it for the first time, thank you. And I hope that you will one day pass this on to someone else in the same way.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thanks.
I have been really, really glad to have the reason to watch and talk about the show. Not merely because it's something to do with you. You're one of my best friends.
Yeah.
I like doing things with you.
Yeah.
But I've been able to introduce the show to my mom and in lesser form to my sister. But hopefully with others. We wouldn't have made this thing if we didn't care a lot about it and we didn't want to talk about the thing. And as we've just gestured at, perhaps the greatest testament that you can give to the show is to talk about it with people.
Totally.
I was talking with Matthew before we started recording about like other readings that you could indulge in with this show. We have taken a very, very particular lens about who McGowan is, how that has affected him as how that affected his process in creating a piece of work that very clearly had things to say, both deliberately and maybe not so deliberately, simply because of the person that he was, right? But there's so many different things that you can talk about the show. You can talk about it in terms of technology. You can talk about it in conversation with the other spy literature of the time. I have seen some really interesting discussion about that stuff. I'm simply just not caught up enough in that stuff to engage with it. You can talk about it in its what it has to say meaningfully or not about masculinity. So if nothing else, I hope this has encouraged you to think and talk about it.
Yeah, because ultimately, right, like Mugun was delighted with any response, right? As long as people are thinking and talking about the show, that's the goal. As long as you're still thinking, as long as you're still feeling.
Right.
Should we try to rate it?
Before that,
yeah,
I like you very much. Number one, I want to know your number one with a bullet, your standout performance, shot, moment, scene. I've got to know.
Oh, man. I think my favorite bit has to be the back and forth between Kenneth Griffith's president and number 48.
Damn it.
Give it to me, baby. That's all you want? Give. That's why I read the whole thing out. I think it's really strong. But, if you want that one instead.
No, you can have it. I've got a backup.
Oh, that's very kind of you.
Yeah, no problem.
I think it's a really cool little moment in an episode I really like. An episode that I think has a bunch of really cool little moments in it.
Cool. I agree. I think that's very good. Mine, he said through gritted teeth, is Love Is All You Need.
Sure.
What a way to remind us when and where this is taking place. It is such an iconic song. It is so, I grew up watching the Yellow Submarine cartoon movie quite a bit. And so a lot of, that era of Beatles is pretty well lodged in my head. But that particular like needle drop, both times that it happens, is so jarring, is so like, oh my God, they got this? This is what they're doing? It's so astonishing that it commands your attention.
Yep.
And it is just the perfect, if you're going to save up money for a needle drop, this is a good one.
It totally is. I mean, even the way that it sort of starts with those horns, right? So it feels like this triumphant or like a fanfare.
It feels like part of this the Prisoner soundtrack.
Exactly. It's really, really nice.
Yeah.
And it's also like it's timeless because the Beatles ended up being timeless, right?
Right.
In a way that like it doesn't date it. You're right. It gives us the era, but it doesn't make the show feel dated.
Not at all. Not at all.
It's really good.
If anything, it feels like given the relative popularity of the Beatles versus the Prisoner these days, it lends a gravitas to the show that I think first time viewers would be like, oh my God.
Yeah, they got this? Really? For this show? Yeah, for sure. All right.
You've said it's a masterpiece, but I've still got to know. Please, oh please, rate this show.
Yeah. If I could, I wouldn't. But that's not how this works.
It's true. You're my prisoner, and I'm going to keep you here.
Then I'll just do it like this. I will have it be 1 out of 1 rockets.
Ooh, very good, very good. Rocket looks like number 1 too.
Sure does.
I likewise like this show very much. I'm going to give this one 205 out of 206 dry bones. Dinging 1 point for this sloppiness on the credit sequence, which will haunt me to my grave.
Very fair. Very fair.
Did you note that the thunder plays over Leo McKern's credit, not over the car driving away?
Well, it does play there, and then like
It continues through. Yeah.
Yeah. But this is where it starts for sure.
The music editor said, that was an accident. And then McGowan said, that's fine. Keep it that way.
I mean, if you're McGowan and you're thinking consciously about like, I want this to be a thing that people can dig into for a long time, like subtle things like that are going to be like, maybe that was intentional, right? You could think maybe it was intentional,
Sure.
and like spend a bunch of time talking about that, right?
I can also imagine him being incredibly tired. And just being like,
drunk.
you know what? We're good to go.
Yeah.
Print.
Yeah. Get it done.
Well, we said we hope that you talk about this show. If you want to talk to us about it, we're going to record one more episode of The Prisoner's Dilemma, where we'll talk a little bit more about our thoughts about the show overall, but we'll also answer your questions if you have them. Please send them to theprisonersdilemmapodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. We've heard so much from Prisoner fans, new and old, along the way.
Yeah.
If you've got questions about our thoughts or particular things or interpretations or just whatever you'd like to say to us, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, definitely. But until then, we should do our thanks.
We should do our thanks.
Say our daily bread.
Daily bread to Cy Sweetman, who did the podcast art. Find his work at cyfsweetman.card.co. Daily bread to Devin Nelson, who did our theme song. Find their work at devindecibel.bandcamp.com. Daily bread to you, Matthew.
Oh, daily bread to you, Brendan.
Thank you. Where can people find you online?
I'm on Blue Sky at Matthew Guz. How about you?
I'm at brendanmcleod.com on Blue Sky. You can also find my blog, sorely in need of an update, at brendanmcleod.dev. You can find the show at the-prisoners-dilemma.com. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with someone. Also consider giving us a 5-star review wherever it is that you're listening to this.
Yeah.
And if you can't
if you're not listening to
if you can't do it there, do it on Apple Podcasts, because that's the one that matters.
Unfortunately. And if you're trapped in a large underground cavern while this is blaring over some speakers and there's some sort of cockney yelling at you, just sort of say 5 stars. That would help.
5. Until next time, I'll be seeing you.
Until last time.
Wow. I'll be seeing you.
Not if I see you first.